The world shattered into fire and screams. An explosion of heat and light ripped through the palace, the air thick with the smell of burning wood and terror. Enemy attack. The words were a death knell echoing through the once peaceful halls. In the chaos, steel met flesh with a sickening squelch and blood sprayed like crimson rain. Cries of agony filled the night. "Ah, don't die, Xueling." But the pleas were lost in the din of war. Arrows rained down from the darkness, a swarm of deadly hornets finding their mark. They pierced her body, turning her into a macabre pincushion. Her lifeblood spilled onto the cold stone floor as she collapsed, her lover's name a final, bloody whisper on her lips. Yunlan. He could only watch, his face a canvas of pure, undiluted horror. Xueling. His voice tore from his throat, a raw sound of a soul being ripped in two. His hands, stained with her blood, trembled as he reached for her. "Don't look at me like that, Yunlan," her voice echoed in his mind, a ghostly whisper from a life already lost. "You hate me, don't you?" His scream was swallowed by the flames. Xueling, her final thoughts drifted through the carnage, a heartbreaking lullaby. "This is for the best, Yunlan, you must not die again." As pink petals danced on the wind, a new chapter began in the Vermilion Kingdom. In the heart of the grand imperial palace, within the opulent walls of the inner palace where the emperor and his 40 concubines resided, a tense silence hung in the air. A woman with piercing violet eyes sat among the others. A picture of calculated boredom. Before them sat the ruler, the son of heaven himself, his expression carved from ice. One by one, the consorts bowed, their movements a graceful, rehearsed ballet. His cold, detached voice cut through the room, calling out a name. "Consort Xueling." She paused, a steamed bun halfway to her lips, and looked up at him. The emperor's brow twitched in annoyance. And there it was, that face, a wicked, brilliant smile spread across Xueling's lips. "You're making the same ridiculous face as always today," she chirped, her voice dripping with mock sweetness. "And you, your majesty, you look as if you've just squashed a smelly bug in your garden." A collective gasp rippled through the assembled women. "How rude, that villainess," they whispered amongst themselves. The emperor's jaw tightened, his voice a low growl. "What an unpleasant woman, as always." He turned his back and strode away, his retinue scurrying to keep up. Xueling watched him go, her smile never faltering. Later, back in her chambers, she sipped her tea, the picture of tranquility. Honestly, his majesty, the nerve of him saying things like that. She huffed, but a moment later she almost spat out her tea, her cheeks flushing a bright red. She clutched her cup, her eyes sparkling with hearts as she swooned. "So cool, he's just too cool, he was so handsome, even for an antagonist. Honestly, your majesty, I can't get enough." Her lady-in-waiting Lingxing stared at her, utterly baffled. "Lady Xueling," she began tentatively, "you love his majesty so much, so why do you act like that toward him? You should try to be more charming." A shadow passed over Xueling's face. "I need his majesty to hate me more and more," she murmured, but Lingxing pressed on, confused. "But Lady Xueling, isn't it your duty to win his majesty's favor and bear him an heir?" An heir, the word was a dagger. Xueling's smile became brittle. "It seems father sent me to the inner palace with that goal in mind." Lingxing leaned closer, her voice dropping to a conspiratorial whisper. Is it true that his majesty is impotent?" Xueling's eyes widened. Lingxing continued, "His majesty is 22 years old, you know. Not only has he not chosen an empress, but he hasn't shared a bed with any of his concubines. Of course, rumors about him being impotent would start to spread." "You're childhood friends with his majesty, aren't you? Do you know anything about it?" The question hung in the air, heavy and sharp. Childhood friends? A lifetime ago, her eyes clouded over with memories. "It's complicated. So very complicated." The past rushed back, a sweet, painful memory. "Yunlan and I first met back when we were 6. He was like a big brother to her, 2 years older, always kind. They were inseparable, their days filled with laughter and innocent games." She remembered tripping, her knees scraped and bleeding, tears welling in her eyes. He had rushed to her side, wiping her tears with his own sleeve. "No, don't," she'd sobbed. "Your pretty clothes will get all dirty." But he had just smiled, his eyes so gentle. "As long as you stop crying and bleeding, my clothes don't matter at all." She remembered holding his hands, his promise echoing in her heart. "Will you promise you'll never change?" he'd asked. And she, with all the certainty of a child, had declared, "Of course, I'll never ever change." But people do change. Several years later, the winter came, and with it, a biting cold that had nothing to do with the weather. For some reason, Ren Yunlan became cold toward her father and stopped coming to their home. She waited for him on the snowy veranda, a small, lonely figure shrinking in the vast emptiness. Now, years later, sitting in the gilded cage of the palace, she felt that same chill. "We've both changed so much. Me and Yunlan." Now she was Xueling, the villainess of the inner palace, and he was the wise young emperor. "The only thing that hasn't changed is that I'm the only one who has always loved Yunlan. And it's precisely because she truly loved him that she had to play this part." The mere thought of him thinking she'd use their affection for power, it made her skin crawl. So it was better this way, better if he despised her completely and threw her out of the inner palace, even if it meant she would never see Yunlan again. A few days later, a delivery arrived from her father, Lord Wuyikan. It was filled with clothes, accessories, and sweets, but hidden among them were books on herbalism and a folded letter. Her blood ran cold as she read it. It was information from her father, the Grand Marshal, the highest rank in the military. The letter spoke of a rebellion plotted by a certain individual, the noble consort. If that's true, then her hands trembled but her eyes burned with a fierce new resolve. I will protect Yunlin even if it costs me my life. That night, a shadowy figure scaled the walls of the inner palace. Noble consort Jingfang watched him with a sly smile. Oh my, for a man to sneak into the inner palace, the highest-ranking consort must have invited him in herself, right? She mused to her guest, Lord Lei Heiyu. He sneered, His Majesty the Emperor sure is restless, isn't he? Not laying a hand on any of his concubines. Is he really impotent, or does he just have no desires? Jingfeng simply smiled, well, I wonder. Lei Heiyu's eyes flashed with ambition. I want to make Ren Yunlan bow down before me. I'm not going to end up as just some chief of a northern regional clan. He grabbed her, his voice a low, dangerous purr. I'll seize the throne of the Vermilion Kingdom and make you, Jingfang, my empress. She leaned into his touch, her lips curving into a triumphant smile. I'm counting on you, Lord Lei Heiyu. Suddenly, a pillar of fire erupted into the night sky, a signal of chaos and death. The palace was ablaze. Xueling's maids rushed to her side, their faces etched with panic. Lady Xueling, there's a fire, please run. But Xueling was unnaturally calm. Where's the source of the fire? She asked, her voice steady. Her maid pointed a trembling finger. I believe it's near the west gate. The west gate, her heart stopped. That's where the emperor's quarters were. A deep, rhythmic drumming began to echo through the palace. Xueling's body went rigid. That sound. That's not how they beat the drums for fire. A horrifying realization dawned on her. The drums beat faster, a frantic, thunderous rhythm that screamed one thing, enemy attack. It can't be already. Her father's voice echoed in her mind, a memory from the day she left for the palace. He had stood before her, his face grim. Xueling, anything can happen in the inner palace. In times of crisis, you must remain calm. He had pressed a small pouch into her hand. Use this to protect yourself and His Majesty. She clutched the pouch now, the fabric cool against her sweaty palm. Maybe father had some kind of premonition. Lingxing burst in hysterical. Lady Xueling, the west gate, it's an enemy attack. Quickly, you have to escape. But Xueling placed a calming hand on her shoulder, her smile serene. It's all right, we're a good distance from the west gate. Let's calm down. She turned to her ladies, her voice full of warmth. Thank you for telling me the situation, Lingxing, and thank you all for staying by my side. Then her expression hardened. Lingxing, where is His Majesty the Emperor? Lingxing's eyes widened. I saw His Majesty near the west gate. Lady Jingfang was with him, so they may have already escaped to safety by now. Jingfang, the traitor, Xueling's world tilted. And just as I thought. She didn't hesitate. Lingxing, take everyone to the east gate, stay safe. Without another word, she turned and ran, her long purple hair flying behind her, racing towards the fire, towards the danger, towards him. Meanwhile, at the west gate, the emperor stood amidst the chaos, his face a mask of cold fury. His aide reported the grim news. Lei Heiyu and his forces, approximately 200 men, that's more than our intelligence suggested. Another aide added, we've sent a messenger to Grand Marshal Wu, but the main forces won't be back until the day after tomorrow. They chose to attack while our main forces are away on the northern expedition, just as the Grand Marshal predicted. The emperor's teeth ground together, his eyes blazing with hatred. That bastard Lei Heiyu, I'll make him regret abandoning his own territory. He turned to his most trusted guard. Yaowen, take the entire shadow guard and capture Lei Heiyu. Don't worry about protecting me. Yaowen hesitated, his face pale, but the emperor's gaze was steel. Yaowen, we made a promise. Yaowen bowed his head, his hand clenching into a fist. As you command. He vanished into the shadows, leaving the emperor utterly alone. A king without his knights, a target waiting for the arrow. As the palace burned, a different memory flickered in the emperor's mind. Lady Jingfang, her voice like poisoned honey. Your Majesty, I have something to discuss with you. It's about the secret you're keeping. Her nails, long and sharp, had glinted in the moonlight as she held up a folded piece of paper. From consort Xueling, the betrayal had felt like a physical blow now as the palace burned. Xueling ran, her lungs screaming for air, her legs aching. But one thought pushed her forward, Yunlan. Are you safe? She rounded a corner and froze. A figure stood in her path, silhouetted against the raging fire. Where are you going, consort Xueling? Lady Jingfang asked, a cruel smile playing on her lips. It's dangerous that way. Xueling's heart pounded in her chest. She had to get past her, but Jingfang blocked her path, her movements like a graceful, deadly snake. If you want to escape, it's that way, consort Xueling, she purred. Xueling ignored her, her eyes scanning the chaos. Lady Jingfang, where is the emperor? Jingfang threw her head back and laughed, a shrill, ugly sound that grated on the nerves. How ridiculous, she cackled, clutching her sides. Don't tell me you're trying to save the emperor. The realization hit Xueling like a physical blow, stealing the air from her lungs. Lady Jingfang, are you the one who caused all this? You are a noble consort sworn to serve His Majesty, why? Jingfang's eyes glittered with amusement. Oh my, the one they call the Villainess of the inner palace, the one hated by His Majesty, is actually in love with the impotent emperor. The words were a slap, but Xueling didn't flinch. She lifted her chin, her voice ringing with defiance. Yes, I love him, what of it? Jingfang feigned a gasp. You see, I want to aim even higher than I am now, and now that someone who can grant that wish has appeared, I no longer have any need for the Emperor of the Vermilion Kingdom. Xueling stared at her horrified. How could you possibly understand? She screamed, her voice raw with fury and desperation. I'm not the villainess of the inner palace. It's Liu Jingfang. She tried to push past to get away. To find Yunlin. But Jingfang's voice stopped her cold, a chilling whisper on the fiery wind. It's too late, flames devoured everything. The screams of the dying were the night's only song. Through the smoke and chaos, she finally saw him. He was slumped against the steps, alone and vulnerable. Your Majesty, she cried out, her voice filled with relief and terror. He looked up, his eyes wide with shock. Xueling, why are you here? Quickly, get away. He was pale, too pale. His breathing was shallow, his hand clutching his chest. It can't be, were you poisoned? He didn't answer, just stared at her, his gaze hazy with pain. It was a small dose, I won't die, he rasped. I just can't move. She fumbled for the pouch her father had given her hands shaking as she pulled out a small wrapped herb. This is a herb that will temporarily neutralize the poison. Please drink it. He turned his head away. I don't need it. Her heart broke. Your Majesty, she pleaded, tears streaming down her face. You may hate me, but please. He wouldn't look at her, he wouldn't take it, and they were out of time. With a sob, she leaned in and pressed her lips to his, forcing the antidote into his mouth. Just then, a deafening crash echoed behind them. The west gate had fallen, enemy soldiers poured into the courtyard. Someone please carry His Majesty, she screamed at the few remaining guards. We must escape to the east gate immediately. But Yunlin pushed her away, his voice weak but laced with steel. Xueling, I don't need your help to be so spiteful even at a time like this. A sad smile touched her lips. He was trying to protect her even now. Hurry and run, he yelled, but it was too late, the gate shattered. And a blade swung through the smoke-filled air, aimed directly at her. The gates burst open with a deafening crash, and a flood of enemy soldiers poured into the courtyard, their swords gleaming under the chaotic torchlight. They charged forward, a wave of death aimed at one man. At the Emperor. Yunlin's face was a mask of desperation, his voice cracking as he screamed her name, begging her to hurry. But it was too late. A figure broke through the ranks, his reddish hair like flickering flames, his eyes wide with a terrifying, manic glee. A grin stretched across his face, revealing teeth like a predator's as he lunged forward. He was here for blood. He was here for the throne. His roar echoed through the night, a promise of death. There you are, Ren Yunlan. A wave of brilliant, destructive energy erupted from his palm, hurtling towards them like a miniature sun. He cackled, his voice dripping with venomous triumph. That head is mine. But Xueling was in the way. Yunlin tried to pull her behind him to shield her from the blast, but the madman just laughed. From the rooftops, archers drew their bows, a dozen deadly points aimed straight for the Emperor's heart. A rain of arrows sliced through the air, whistling a song of imminent death. Time seemed to slow to a crawl. Xueling's heart hammered against her ribs. This couldn't be happening. Her eyes widened, reflecting the fiery doom that was about to consume them. A single word escaped her lips, a choked whisper of denial. No, in that split second, her entire life flashed before her eyes, not her life but his, Yunlin, the emperor of this country. The kind, gentle soul she had watched from afar, the man who held the nation's bright future in his hands. How could she let that future be extinguished here? Memories flooded back. A childhood crush that blossomed into a deep, unwavering love, a love she had never once dared to confess. A secret she had carried in her heart like a precious, painful jewel. The arrows were just inches away. There was no more time. A fierce resolve hardened her features, chasing away the fear. A single thought consumed her, my beloved Yunlin. I absolutely will not let you die. With a cry, she threw herself in front of him, her body becoming a shield, her arms wrapped around him in a final, desperate embrace. I'll protect him, she vowed, even if it costs me my life. A sickening squelch echoed in the sudden silence. Yunlin's voice was a strangled whisper, full of disbelief and horror as he breathed her name. Xueling, she looked up at him, her vision blurring, a weak smile gracing her lips as she confirmed his fears. Yes. Blood, warm and sticky, began to pour from her lips. Your Majesty, she whispered, her strength failing. The world started to spin as the arrows found their mark, piercing her back again and again. It's a brutal thudding that stole her breath away. Yunlin held her tighter, his face contorted in agony as he screamed, Don't die, Xueling. But she was already fading. She looked into his shattered eyes, the eyes of the man she loved, and her voice was barely audible. Don't look at me like that, Yunlin. With her last breath, she asked the question that had haunted her for years. You hate me, don't you? Tears streamed down Yunlin's face, his body trembling with a grief so profound it seemed to break him. But I haven't said anything yet. He choked out, his voice raw with pain. Don't die again. The Emperor's guards finally swarmed in, shouting orders to protect His Majesty, pulling their grieving emperor away from the carnage. The attacker, Lord Haiyu, watched in disbelief as a second wave of soldiers, the Vermilion army, appeared out of nowhere. A separate detachment? What? He snarled in frustration, realizing the tables had turned. Retreat, he commanded, vanishing into the chaos. On the cold stone floor, Xueling lay in a growing pool of her own blood, the arrows sticking out of her back like grotesque wings. But a small, peaceful smile touched her lips. I'm glad. The world around her burned. But in her heart, there was only peace. In the end, I was able to become a shield for the one I love. Her unconfessed feelings, her secret love, she would lock it away forever. From the bottom of my heart, I'll pray for his happiness with whomever he ends up with one day. And then, darkness. Petals drifted on a gentle breeze, landing softly on the serene grounds of the Vermilion Palace. A new day had dawned. Kneeling on the cold, polished stone was a young woman, her head bowed before the throne. And sitting on that throne was Emperor Yunlan, his expression unreadable, his gaze heavy as he looked down at her. His voice, cold and distant, echoed in the silent hall. Oh, what is your name? The woman flinched, her body frozen in place. She slowly lifted her head, her face pale, her eyes wide with a dawning horror. It was Xueling's face. No way, her mind screamed. There's no way I can tell him my name is Xueling. How is this possible? What was happening? A single, terrifying thought consumed her. I was supposed to have died. Wasn't I? The memories were so clear. Wu Xueling died acting as Ren Yunlan's shield. She remembered the pain, the darkness. And then, a cocoon, a strange ethereal space filled with light. She remembered floating, her body weightless, reborn anew. Like the myths of the Vermilion Kingdom spoke of, reincarnation. But the process felt wrong, incomplete, and then she was falling, tumbling back into the world of the living. She awoke with a gasp, her hand touching the hard ground of the palace courtyard. Where am I? The familiar red gates confirmed her location. This is the outer court of the Vermilion Kingdom. Before she could process it, officials spotted her, their faces contorting in shock and disbelief. One of them pointed a trembling finger, his voice a horrified whisper. That face, don't tell me you're consort Xueling. One of them lunged, but his hand passed through an invisible barrier, unable to touch her. She saw her reflection in a polished surface and gasped. She looks so much like me, but that's not me. Consort Xueling died a year ago, another official stated, his voice firm. A year, her mind reeled. I died, spent a year inside the cocoon, and was reborn as someone else. Back in the throne room, the emperor's question hung in the air. Oh, what is your name? She couldn't tell him the truth. He would never believe it. Panic seized her and a new name tumbled from her lips. Xuehua, that's my name. Yunlin's eyes narrowed slightly, a flicker of something unreadable in their depths, before his face settled into a mask of cold indifference. After a long, tense silence, he spoke. I've been wanting a female royal guard. Xuehua's head snapped up, confusion clouding her features. A guard, he continued, his voice devoid of emotion. Someone to attend to my personal needs in times of war would be perfect. His gaze was piercing, his next words an ultimatum. If you refuse, I will consider you a suspicious person and have you executed. The threat hung in the air, chilling her to the bone. This is terrifying. If you agree to serve me from this moment on, he finished, I will spare your life. Her mind raced. It doesn't look like he thinks I'm Xueling. And why would he? Who would ever believe that one of the consorts he hated most, who died a year ago, would just come waltzing back into the Vermilion Castle? Even I wouldn't believe it. So what's your answer, Xuehua? He pressed. She looked up at him, the man she had died for, and a genuine, radiant smile broke across her face. Yes, if you will have me. As long as I can be useful to Yunlan, she thought, I'll do anything. The memory of his grief-stricken face flashed in her mind. Just knowing that he was safe was enough for her. I'm so glad that you're safe. She bowed low, her forehead touching the cold floor in a display of absolute devotion. Yunlan watched her, his expression a storm of complicated emotions, a deep sadness lingering in his eyes. Her new life began in the training grounds, the clang of steel on steel ringing in her ears. She was brought before a stern-looking man dressed in dark robes, a mask concealing the lower half of his face. This must be the commander. The man's gaze was sharp, analytical. He already knew her name was Xuehua, but his question cut straight to the heart of the matter. Who are you, really? His name was Lord Yaowen, and his interrogation was relentless. He brought up the report of her amnesia. She confirmed it, explaining she had just come to her senses in front of the gate. It was a convenient lie. I can't just tell them I'm consort Wu Xueling, who died a year ago and was reincarnated as someone else. Lord Yaowen's eyes narrowed suspiciously. Did you try to seduce his majesty? Xuehua flushed bright red, sputtering in denial. Of course not. What is this person talking about? Then why, he pressed, were you assigned to the Shadow Guard? The Shadow Guard, what was that? She thought she was just a royal guard. Lord Yaowen explained coldly. The Shadow Guard were the Emperor's elite private soldiers, tasked not only with his protection, but with observing subversive elements. He gave her a pointed look. Suspicious people like you. He then asked if she remembered the assassination attempt from a year ago. Vaguely, as she lied. Inside, her heart clenched. I know all about it, but saying that would sound suspicious, wouldn't it? She began to recite the official story she'd heard whispered in the palace. The powerful Lord Lei Heiyu launched a surprise attack on the rear palace. His underlings conspired with, of all people, a royal consort. Her mind filled with the image of the beautiful but cruel noble consort Liu Jingfang. But Lord Yaowen's next words shattered her world. The one who plotted treason and poisoned Yunlin was consort Xueling. His voice dripped with contempt as he spat the name, that wretched Villainess. The air was knocked from Xuehua's lungs, a strangled gasp escaped her lips. By Xueling, me? Lord Yawen continued, oblivious to her shock. We were able to protect his majesty, but it was truly all thanks to Lady Jingfang. The world tilted on its axis. What in the world are you talking about? Thanks to Lady Jingfang, what is that supposed to mean? The horrible truth crashed down on her like a tidal wave. That incident with Xueling has been blamed on me in that case. A cold dread far worse than the fear of death washed over her. What happened to father, my sisters, Linxing, and the others? If they are considered relatives of someone who tried to assassinate the emperor, then they must be. Lord Yawen noticed her face had gone deathly pale. What's wrong, you look pale, he asked, his voice sharp. Just then, another guard arrived. The preparations are complete. I'm on my way, Lord Yawen said, then gestured to Xuehua. You come with me. They walked out into the main training yard, where dozens of hardened soldiers stood waiting. Lord Yawen addressed her coolly. I don't know who you are, but now that you're a member of the Shadow Guards, we need to figure out how to best make use of you. He took a step back, a cruel glint in his eye. We are going to test your skills. Xuehua's mind went blank with panic. Skills, a memory of her past life surfaced, of lessons in dance, music, and poetry. I received training to be a graceful consort, but I don't recall ever receiving martial arts training. She looked at the circle of intimidating soldiers closing in around her, their swords drawn, and her face became a mask of pure, unadulterated terror. Within the grand, silent halls of the imperial palace, the Emperor Yunlan sat alone, his brush dancing across the parchment with practiced grace. But his mind was far from the official documents piled before him. A sigh escaped his lips. To think he'd have to wear the dragon robes? Even when it wasn't a ceremony, the formal attire felt so stiff, so constricting. An aide reminded him it was for the sake of his imperial dignity. But Yunlin's thoughts were already elsewhere. His gaze sharpened as he looked up at his most trusted man, Lord Yawen. He cut straight to the point, his voice low and demanding as he asked, So, how is that woman? Yawen's expression was grim. He began his report on Xuehua, explaining that they had her spar with their squad members to test her abilities. And the result, it was unexpected. In a flash of memory, Yawen saw his men, trained warriors, being thrown through the air like ragdolls. Her fist was a blur, her movements precise and deadly. Yawen's own fist clenched as he finished his thought, admitting frankly, she's strong. The scene was absolute chaos. One moment, his men were charging, confident and skilled. The next, they were a tangled mess of limbs on the training grounds, their weapons scattered. One after another they fell, utterly defeated by this slender woman who claimed to have no memory. Xuehua stood amidst the fallen men, her chest heaving not from exhaustion but from sheer shock. The other squad members could only stare, their mouths agape in disbelief. From a bird's eye view, she was the calm center of a storm of defeated bodies. Her eyes were wide, 1,000 questions swirling within them. Oh my, she whispered to herself, why am I so strong? Just as one of the guards struggled to his feet, vowing to go one more round, her body reacted before her mind could even process it. Asterisk, I don't really understand it myself. Asterisk, she thought, a spark igniting in her eyes. Asterisk, but my body, it knows how to move. Asterisk. A surge of power welled up from deep within her core, coursing through her veins. It was an instinct, a forgotten memory etched into her very muscles. With a swift, fluid motion, she dodged his attack and sent him crashing to the ground. She immediately knelt, her previous ferocity replaced by a flustered apology. But the men weren't angry, they were in awe. Amazing, one of them gasped. Where did she get that kind of strength from such a slender body? They crowded around her, their faces alight with admiration and curiosity. Her stamina was incredible, fighting one after another without breaking a sweat. They declared that Xuehua could be an immediate asset. Overwhelmed, she could only offer a shy thank you. Suddenly, Lord Yawen called her name, his voice cutting through the chatter. He looked at her, his eyes sharp and calculating. He reminded her that she'd claimed to have amnesia, but wondered if she had learned martial arts before. Xuehua froze, a bead of sweat tracing a path down her temple. Well? She stammered, unable to form a coherent answer. The other men jumped to her defense, suggesting that maybe her body just remembers. Could it be? Did His Majesty realize something about Xuehua that even she had forgotten? They were completely won over, singing praises of the Emperor's wisdom. A warm feeling spread through Xuehua's chest. Yunlin was being recognized, and she was so happy for him. Memories, or rather stories she had heard, flooded her mind. Yunlin had inherited the throne from his late father 4 years ago when he was only 19. A boy king. The young emperor's power was immediately seized by the Empress Dowager, and she'd heard he was often belittled and struggled to find his footing. But now, looking at the loyal faces of these men, she felt a profound sense of relief. Thank goodness, she whispered, a gentle smile on her lips. Now Yunlin has allies. The men, completely charmed, told her to ask if there was anything she didn't understand, anything at all. An idea sparked in her mind. This was her chance. In that case, she began. Back in the Emperor's study, Yunlan's eyes narrowed behind the beaded curtain. So, he repeated slowly, you're saying Xuehua is looking into my assassination attempt? Yawen confirmed it. And what's more, she was asking about Wu Zuling's relatives, the current situation of Wu Terran and her handmaidens. She even wanted to know what the guards and officials who were supposed to be there at the West Gate had testified. Yawen posed the critical question that hung in the air. For someone with amnesia who barely knows who she is, are these the first things she should be asking about? Meanwhile, Xuehua was facing her own interrogation. A stern-faced man with a bandage on his neck, Konghu, loomed over her, demanding to know why she was so concerned about that asterisk. It's nothing, she said, waving her hands dismissively, but internally she was panicking. Asterisk, damn it, asterisk. She forced a bright, innocent smile, explaining that she'd just asked Lord Yawen a moment ago. I was just simply curious, you know. After all, if she was going to be serving His Majesty, wasn't it natural to want to know various things? Konghu wasn't buying it. He stood there silent and menacing, his hand slowly reaching for the hilt of his sword. Xuehua's eyes widened in terror. Asterisk, crap. Asterisk, just as the tension was about to snap, a calm voice interjected. Let it go, Konghu. A young man with blonde hair and a gentle smile stepped forward. It was Xueling. He called out to Konghu, reasoning that anyone would be intensely curious about what happened that night. Xuehua watched them, her heart still pounding. Asterisk, these two, asterisk. She noted their uniforms. Yawen was wearing deep green, meaning he was a lower squad leader. Xueling, with his disarming smile, stepped closer. Offering to tell her what happened that night, Xuehua's face lit up. Please do, she urged. I don't really understand. But back in the Emperor's chambers, the mood was far darker. Lord Yawen's voice was dangerously low. That woman knows too much, he stated, his fists clenched at his sides. He revealed a chilling fact. I never mentioned the name Wu Terran or the West Gate to Xuehua. The Emperor's face was a mask of cold fury, his hand covering his mouth as he processed the information. Yawen pressed on, his loyalty burning in his eyes. Your Majesty, she is dangerous. He couldn't understand it. Why would His Majesty keep someone like that by his side? And of all things, why keep a woman who looks just like Xueling? The name hung in the air, a phantom of betrayal and pain. The image of the Villainess, the woman who had torn his world apart, superimposed itself over the face of the innocent-looking Xuehua. Lord Yawen repeated his plea, his voice filled with confusion and concern. Above all, a woman who looks just like Xueling. The Emperor finally snapped, his face contorted in a snarl of pure hatred, the beads of his crown trembling with his rage. So I don't forget that hateful, wicked woman, he roared. Elsewhere, Xuehua was having a complete meltdown. This is the worst. How did it come to this? She cried, pacing in her room. According to Xueling, things have gotten even worse than before she died. She replayed their conversation in her head. Xueling, with his gentle smile, had agreed to explain everything. First, he told her about Wu Zuling's father, Wu Terran. He was under house arrest by the Justice Ministry. Xuehua gasped, house arrest. But at least he was still alive. Then came the next blow. As for Wu Zuling's body, it still hadn't been found. But according to Lady Jingfang, her death was confirmed. No body, and what did Jingfang say? Xuehua pressed, asking what His Majesty remembered about that night. The answer shattered her. His Majesty has no memory of the events before and after. The Emperor was plagued by the gap in his memory, his head in his hands. What? Xuehua cried out loud. The Emperor's memories? What on earth is happening? Xueling delivered the final, devastating piece of the puzzle. They believe it's due to poison. Poison that consort Xueling gave to him. Xuehua's world tilted on its axis. Asterisk, consort Xueling poisoned him? Asterisk, that's right, Xueling confirmed, his face grim. The official story was that not only did she guide the traitor Lei Heiyu into the harem, she also tried to assassinate His Majesty with poison. Asterisk, what? Asterisk, the words screamed in her mind. According to the twisted narrative, when His Majesty lay alone and collapsed, it was the brave Lady Jingfang who rushed to him. She offered him medicinal herbs and saved his life. Why, that's the opposite. Xuehua shrieked internally, pulling at her hair in frustration. Asterisk, it was me. I gave him the herbs. Asterisk. It all became sickeningly clear. Lady Jingfang was taking advantage of Yunlan's lost memories. She was making up whatever she wanted. Now the entire palace whispered about it. Consort Xueling had always behaved poorly, but now she was officially the worst villainess in the history of the harem. Meanwhile, Lady Jingfang was a wonderful hero. It was only natural, they said, that His Majesty is so deeply affectionate toward her. Deeply affectionate? The words were a knife in Xuehua's heart. She collapsed onto her bed, utterly defeated. How did it end up like this? She remembered her wish before she died. That the wind would bring them together someday. She genuinely wished for his happiness. But she shot up in bed, her face a mask of fury. That partner being Lady Jingfang is the problem. The villainess of the harem, Liu Jingfang. That's unforgivable, Tilda. She screamed into her empty room. Suddenly, her door slid open. Lord Yawen stood there, his expression unreadable. Lady Jingfang, what about her? He asked calmly. Xuehua froze, caught in her outburst. She waved her hands frantically. Never mind, she mumbled as he slammed the door shut. That startled me, she yelped, clutching her chest. Why was Lord Yaowen here? Asterisk, it's because I'm a suspicious person, isn't it? Asterisk, her mind raced. She wanted to investigate Liu Jingfang. But there were so many other things she needed to do. Her priorities swirled in her head. Drag Lady Jingfang away from Yunlin's side. Rescue her father, find out what happened to Lingxing and the others for that, first. She stood before the door, her resolve hardening. I need to gather proof that Xueling is innocent. Unseen by her, Yaowen, Konghu, and Xiaoying watched from the trees. They had been observing her this whole time. Xiaoying smiled cryptically, whether that girl becomes a blessing or a curse to his highness. He mused, let's keep watch and find out ourselves. Yaowen simply walked away, his duty clear in his mind. He didn't know who Xuehua really was, but if she posed a threat to his highness, he would show no mercy. That was all there was to it. The next morning, Xuehua was ready to begin her mission. I'll start with what I can do, she declared. I'll gather information in between training sessions. She strode out into the courtyard, calling out a cheerful good morning, huh? Her jaw dropped. The entire courtyard was a whirlwind of activity. Men were packing crates, carrying supplies, and scurrying about in a frenzy. What's going on? She wondered aloud. A fellow guard explained that a sudden imperial expedition had been decided. What imperial expedition? It meant His Majesty himself would lead the troops and set off on a campaign. The destination was Hicken, a small rural town near the northern, where rumors of rebel forces were hiding. This was Yunlin's chance to finally pursue the traitor Lei Heiyu, but for the emperor to go himself. And with such a small number of soldiers, it was far too reckless. She learned that Yunlin wouldn't listen, even when everyone tried to stop him. Lei Heiyu, the man Lady Jingfang brought into the harem that night. Just what kind of man was he? Before she could ponder it further, Lord Yaowen appeared, telling her to get ready quickly. Xuehua, you're coming too? Why? Was it because of her unusual strength? Soon enough, the order to depart was given. And the small army left the capital behind. Riding along, Xuhua's heart was heavy. She was worried about her father and the others. She really didn't want to leave Zhejiang. But then a thought occurred to her. Instead of clumsily gathering intel in the city, it might be better to talk to the soldiers along the way. Days of marching and camping blurred together, and it was harder than she ever imagined. One evening, as she collapsed onto her sleeping roll, a guard rushed in with alarming news about His Majesty. He said he hadn't been able to bathe in 2 days and wanted to wash up. A bath, Xuhua's eyes widened. He went to the lake with just 2 guards. What was he thinking? Did he not know the terrain? Was he not aware he was the emperor? And they lost sight of him. Panic seized her. Form a search party, she yelled, bolting out of the tent. She didn't wait for a response, simply running into the dark woods. Into the night that was as black as ink. She moved through the mist-filled forest, her senses on high alert. She stopped, closing her eyes and listening to the sounds of the night. Probably this way, she whispered, her feet finding a path as if by magic. Suddenly, a low growl echoed through the trees. She spun around, her heart leaping into her throat. A pack of wolves, their eyes glowing with hunger in the darkness, had surrounded her. They snarled, saliva dripping from their bared teeth. But just as they were about to pounce, they suddenly whimpered and scattered, running back into the woods. Xuehua pressed a hand to her chest, breathing a sigh of relief. But why, ever since she was reincarnated, strange things had been happening. Martial arts she'd never learned, bottomless stamina, vision that could pierce through the dark, and for some reason, she knew with absolute certainty that she could find Yunlin's scent faster than anyone. Please, let him be safe, she prayed, breaking into a desperate run through the forest. Then she heard it, a faint sound. It was Yunlin's voice. She scrambled up a rocky cliff face, her heart pounding with a mix of fear and relief, and there he was, perched precariously on a ledge, his clothes torn and stained with blood. He looked up, his eyes widening in surprise as he whispered her name. Xuehua, I found him, she breathed, relief washing over her. Thank goodness. Yes, I'm Xuehua, she confirmed, her voice trembling. He explained that he had slipped in here. She carefully helped him up, her arm around his waist for support. Spotting an old abandoned tent nearby, she guided him inside. It was too dangerous to move in the dark, so they would have to wait for dawn. He sat down, looking worn and tired, but thankfully not seriously hurt. I brought some salve with me, she said gently, her cheeks warming slightly. She asked if she could treat the scratches on his back. He simply agreed, and she knelt behind him, her fingers fumbling with the small jar. As she looked at him, his long hair brushing against his blood-stained robes, a realization hit her with the force of a lightning bolt. Her face flushed a deep crimson. Asterisk, could it be? No, definitely, it's just Yunlin and me, alone together. Asterisk, his voice, a low murmur, broke through her frantic thoughts. Why are you nervous? I'm not, she squeaked, her face burning hotter than a furnace. He shifted slightly, a soft sound of pain escaping his lips as he tugged at his robe. Just hurry and apply the salve, he commanded, his voice tight. The room was cloaked in shadows, the only light a single flickering candle. Yunlin sat with his back to her, his robes hanging loosely off his powerful shoulders. His voice cut through the silence, laced with impatience as he ordered her to just hurry and apply the salve. Xuhua's heart hammered against her ribs. She looked down at the man lying on the bed, his chest bare and her cheeks burned with heat. What a fool, she chastised herself internally. Don't get any strange ideas, this is the Emperor. With a deep breath, she puffed out her cheeks, trying to calm her racing pulse. As she rose from her knees, her steps hesitant as she approached him, but as her gaze fell upon his back, she froze. The air left her lungs in a silent gasp. His back, it was a horrifying tapestry of violence. His skin, so pale and beautiful from the front, was marred by a crisscrossing network of scars. There were cuts, fresh and still weeping blood, deep wounds that looked agonizingly painful, and older, silvery scars that told stories of battles long past. How could one person live through this? How much pain had he endured all alone? He must have felt her hesitation, her silent horror, because his voice, softer now, questioned her. Yunlin Yu, she whispered, her voice trembling. Snapping out of it, she stammered an apology and dipped her finger into the cool salve. "Well then, excuse me," she murmured, her voice barely audible. Her fingers, coated in the ointment, made contact with his skin. He flinched, a sharp intake of breath hissing through his teeth, and a faint blush crept up his neck. She immediately pulled her hand back, her eyes wide with concern, asking if it had hurt. "Don't fuss," he grumbled, turning his face away. "Keep going." A sad smile touched her lips. He was just pretending it didn't hurt, wasn't he? He was always like this, bearing everything alone. As her fingers gently worked the salve into his wounds, a memory washed over her, vivid and bittersweet. It was from long ago, when she was still a little girl named Xueling. She had tended to Yunlin's wounds on his back just like now. Back then, she thought he was just a kind big brother. But even as a child, she had sensed a deep hidden sorrow within him. She felt like Yunlin was crying, even when his face was stoic. The past and present began to blur. Her hand hovered over a particularly nasty scar, her heart aching for the little boy he once was and the broken man he had become. "Are you done?" His voice, low and rough, shattered the memory, pulling her back to the present. She blinked, startled, and quickly confirmed that she was finished. He stood abruptly, pulling his robes closed around his shoulders. "Turn off the lights," he commanded, his tone leaving no room for argument. "We'll depart at dawn, so I'm going to sleep." And with that, he simply collapsed onto the bed, his back to her. Xuehua stood frozen, utterly bewildered. After a moment of stunned silence, she timidly asked where she was supposed to sleep. From the bed, his voice was muffled by the blankets. "How should I know?" Then, as an afterthought, he added the final, crushing blow. "You're on night watch all night." Her jaw dropped, so mean, the candle was snuffed out, plunging the room into darkness. With a sigh, she sank to the cold, hard floor, hugging her knees to her chest as the Emperor slept soundly in the warm, comfortable bed. Just as she was drifting into an uneasy sleep, a faint, desperate whisper reached her ears. "Please don't go." Her eyes snapped open. She scrambled to his side, her heart pounding. "Your Majesty," she called out softly. He was thrashing in his sleep, his hand clamped over his eyes as if to shield himself from some unseen horror. A nightmare. He was trapped in a nightmare. His brow was furrowed in agony, his face slick with a cold sweat. His hand reached out, grasping at nothing, his voice breaking as he pleaded again. "Please don't go." Acting on pure instinct, she reached out and took his searching hand in both of hers. His skin was like ice. What terrible memories was he reliving? Leaning closer, she whispered into the darkness, her voice a soothing balm. "I'm not going anywhere, Your Majesty," she promised. "I'm right here." A small, peaceful smile graced his lips as his tormented features relaxed. "Thank goodness," he murmured, his breathing finally evening out. But as she watched him, a sharp pang of jealousy pierced her heart. Who on earth was he dreaming about? She stayed there, kneeling by his bed, her hands still holding his. "I'm here by your side, so it's okay," she whispered, as much to herself as to him. "It's okay, Yunlin." And as she watched over him, she was pulled into the depths of his dream. His voice, young and haunted, echoed in her mind. "Even now, I sometimes still dream." The dreamscape shifted to the sprawling, opulent palace of the Vermilion Empire. He saw his father, the former emperor, a cruel man whose eyes gleamed with a terrifying fondness for war. He waged bloody battles year after year, leaving a trail of destruction in his wake. In the middle of that despair, one cold winter day, his mother, a woman who had everything stolen from her by the Vermilion Empire, gave birth to a son. That child was him, but any hope for a family was a lie. His father quickly tired of his mother, seeing the boy as nothing more than an heir, a tool. And his mother hated them both. She hated the man who had ruined her life, and she hated the son who was a constant, living reminder of her suffering. He was utterly alone, a child adrift in a sea of cold indifference. But then she appeared, a girl with eyes as bright as stars and a smile that could melt the winter snow. She was a splash of brilliant color in his gray, lonely world. She looked at him, truly saw him, and asked for his name. The dream shifted, the memory sharpening. He was a small boy again, facing his mother under the cold moonlight. He thought to himself, "Mother, you never even wanted to give birth to me, did you?" His small voice trembled as he asked the question that had haunted his entire existence. "Why was I even born?" Her reply was a blade to his heart. Her eyes, devoid of any maternal warmth, stared right through him as she spoke, her voice like ice. "You should have just died." Her gaze filled with a terrifying, all-consuming hatred. That man and you too. He was the crown prince, a pitiful figure hated by his own mother and ignored by his father. He would sit alone for hours, invisible to the world. The only kindness he knew came from Wu Taran, a general who would visit and tell him stories of far-off lands and epic battles. He was the only father figure Yunlin ever had. And then one day everything changed. He was standing with Wu Taran when a little girl came running toward them, her laughter echoing through the courtyard. She stopped right in front of him, her eyes sparkling with life. "Nice to meet you," she chirped. "I'm Xueling, Wu Xueling, what's your name?" He was frozen, a blush creeping up his neck as she took his hand in hers. He finally managed to utter his own name. Yunlin. The moment she said his name back to him, it was like he finally existed. He wasn't just the unloved prince anymore. He was Yunlin, she became his son. They spent every moment together making flower crowns, splashing in ponds, chasing butterflies, and playing in the snow. She was his first friend, his only joy, but the darkness was never far away. One day she saw the dark, ugly bruises blooming on his neck. "Yunlin, what's wrong?" she asked, her innocent face etched with worry. The happy memory dissolved into a horrifying nightmare. He was in a room with his mother, her hands wrapped around his throat, squeezing the life out of him. Her face was a mask of insanity as she screamed, "Die, just die already. I'll never let someone like you become emperor of this country. We'll fall together, mother and son." His father stood frozen in the doorway, his face a canvas of pure horror as blood splattered across the room. His mother collapsed, her life pooling on the floorboards. He just stood there, a small trembling child, staring at the blood. Later he was outside, the world a blur through his tears. Xueling found him. "Yunlin, what's wrong?" she asked gently. "Are you sad?" He fell to his knees and she wrapped her small arms around him, holding him tight. "Don't cry," she promised, her voice fierce. "I'm here, I'll always be by your side. I'll protect you forever so you won't have to cry, I promise." He looked up at her, his tears still falling, but a new fire ignited in his eyes. He made a vow to her, to himself. He would become emperor and create a country where no one had to cry. "You protected me, so now it's my turn to protect you," he declared. He reached for her smiling face, his heart full of hope. "So when that time comes, Xueling, I want you there by my side." But the image of her vibrant smile shattered, replaced by the blood and horror of her death. Yunlin's eyes snapped open, a single tear escaping and tracing a path down his temple. He looked down and saw Xuehua asleep on the cold floor, her hand still clutching his. A gentle expression softened his features. He carefully stood, scooped her into his arms, and carried her to the bed, laying her down softly on the mattress. He watched her sleep for a long moment, his gaze unreadable, haunted by the ghosts of his past. The next morning, Xiaoan found the emperor already awake. He eyed him suspiciously. "Your Majesty, you just got back and gave that long lecture and you still have more to say, Xiaoan?" Yunlin asked, raising an eyebrow. Xiaoan hesitated, then blurted out the question that was plaguing him. "Were you really with Xuehua all night?" When Yunlin confirmed it without batting an eye, Xiaoan pressed on, his voice dropping to a conspiratorial whisper. "Did nothing happen? I mean, Xuehua is technically a woman, so I just thought maybe, you know, a one-night mistake or something like that." Yunlin stared at him for a second before bursting into laughter. "What kind of nonsense is that? Don't worry about unnecessary things, Xiaoan." Meanwhile, Xuehua was miles away, her heart soaring. She was on a reconnaissance mission in Fireland Village, a place so different from the stifling confines of the palace. The sun was warm, the air was fresh, and she felt truly free for the first time in 2 lifetimes. "Amazing," she breathed. In her past life as a concubine, she would have been trapped behind palace walls forever. She never dreamed she could join the Imperial Guard and see the world like this. A fond memory surfaced. As a little girl, listening to her father and Yunlin talk about great generals, she had proudly declared, "I'm gonna be a general too, I'll protect Yunlin." Her father had chuckled, asking if that wasn't a little tough for a girl. But Yunlin had looked at her with such belief in his eyes. "If it's Xueling, she can do it," he'd said with a smile. The memory filled her with determination. "I'm going to give my all to this village investigation," she declared to the sky. But in her excitement, she got carried away, wandering far from the village paths. "Yaoan's probably going to scold me," she muttered, deciding to head back. That's when she saw him. A man with fiery red hair was leaning against a giant tree, his head bowed. Her eyes widened when she saw the blood soaking his clothes. He was injured and the fabric of his tunic was of the highest quality. This was no villager. What was he doing all the way out here? Her guard went up instantly. Yaoan's stern voice echoed in her mind. Asterisk, we're not supposed to approach suspicious individuals. Our job is to gather intel and report it back. Asterisk, but before she could slip away, the man stirred with a pained groan. Her resolve crumbled. She couldn't just leave him. She cautiously approached, knelt beside him, and began to clean his wound with water from her flask. He hissed in pain. "Did that hurt? Bear with it a little longer," she said softly, tearing a strip from her sleeve to bandage the injury. When she finished, he looked up, a dazzling grin splitting his face. "You're pretty good at this," he said, his voice surprisingly cheerful. "Thanks," she nodded curtly, thinking that this was their first time meeting, yet something about him felt strangely familiar. Shaking the thought away, she stood to leave. "Well then, I'll be going," but a hand shot out and grabbed her wrist. Hey, what's your name? Before she could react, he had pulled her against the tree, his body caging hers. His eyes roamed over her uniform. You're wearing some unusual clothes, especially for a woman, he mused. What are you, a soldier from Vermilion, even though you're a woman? A spark of anger ignited within her. For a woman this, for a woman that, so what if I'm a woman? How annoying. His condescending tone was infuriating. He just laughed, a deep rumbling sound. That angry face is cute too. That was the last straw. Her fist shot out, connecting with his stomach. He doubled over, laughing and apologizing at the same time. Sorry, I didn't mean anything by it, he gasped. He claimed he was from a well-off family and had been ambushed by bandits. Totally shady, she thought, not believing a word of it. He was still pestering her for her name. So persistent, your name, he demanded. She felt like a fly caught in a spider's web. I'm Xuehua, she finally snapped, hoping it would make him let her go. Well then, see you, she tried to bolt, but he moved with inhuman speed, appearing in front of her in a blur. The way he moves, he's not normal. He backed her against the tree again, his face just inches from hers. His gaze was intense, his golden eyes seeming to pierce right through her soul. He gently cupped her face in his hand, his thumb stroking her cheek. His voice was low, serious, and held a strange weight that sent shivers down her spine. Xuehua, be my wife. The air in the command tent was thick with impatience. Lord Yaowen paced back and forth, his arms crossed tightly over his chest, his brow furrowed in a deep, frustrated line. Every passing second felt like an eternity. Suddenly, a guard rushed in, breathless. Yaowen's head snapped up, hope warring with dread in his eyes as he demanded a report. Has Xuehua finally returned? The guard hesitated, his voice low. No, she rode off somewhere on horseback alone, it seems. Yaowen's face contorted with rage. Ugh, again, seriously, he roared, slamming his hand against his forehead. That reckless, infuriating woman, how many times was she going to pull a stunt like this? The guard quickly added that they noticed it right away this time and that Lord Xueling was already tracking her. Elsewhere, riding through the golden-hued forest, the Emperor's thoughts were a tangled mess. A dark premonition coiled in his gut. Xueling's looking for Xuehua, don't tell me. Is is she really nothing to his majesty? Is she just another soldier he can afford to lose? The wind whipped through the trees, carrying a scent of danger and something else, something unexpected. Under the dappled light of a massive tree, the air crackled with tension. Lei Heiyu had Xuehua pinned, his body caging hers against the rough bark. His voice was a low, possessive rumble that sent a shiver down her spine. Xuehua, be my wife. The words hung in the air, audacious and insane. Xuhua's mind went completely blank, her eyes wide with disbelief. A slow, predatory smirk spread across his face. What? The shock finally broke, replaced by a surge of pure outrage. Excuse me, she spat, trying to shove him away. But he moved with the fluid grace of a predator, sidestepping her clumsy attempt and capturing her wrist in an iron grip. Her comrades charged forward in a chaotic flurry, trying to save her. But it was useless. He held her fast, a human shield, effortlessly deflecting their attacks. Let me go, she screamed, struggling against his hold. He just laughed, a cruel, amused sound. Nope, you run off the moment I let you go, he purred into her ear. Run off? I can't even shake him off. Panic began to set in. This man, he's stronger than me. Her voice was trembling with fury as she yelled, I have zero intention of becoming your wife. His grin only widened. He brushed a stray strand of hair from her face with a flick of his fingers. You really are cute, he murmured, his eyes raking over her, totally my type. Before she could react, his hand was on her chin, tilting her face up to his. I've got no choice but to make you my wife. His lips crashed down on hers, silencing her protests. Her hands flew up to his chest, pushing desperately, but it was like trying to move a mountain. A muffled sound of outrage was all she could manage. Don't be ridiculous, she shrieked in her mind. And with a final, desperate surge of strength, she threw him off. He stumbled back, surprise flashing in his eyes. But in that split second, a flash of steel sliced through the air. A blade was at his throat, and Xuehua was yanked backwards into a firm, protective embrace. Her heart hammered against her ribs as she looked up. Yunlan. His arm was a steel band around her, his expression a mask of cold fury. A single drop of blood traced a path down his sword. He came to save me? The realization sent a jolt through her. But Lei Heiyu didn't look scared, he looked thrilled. He licked the blood from his lips, a wild, dangerous glint in his eyes. Yunlin's voice was a low growl, vibrating with a rage that seemed to shake the very ground. Lei Heiyu. Xuhua's eyes widened. Wait, he's Lei Heiyu, the infamous rebel leader, the man who tried to kill the emperor. Yunlin was trembling, his knuckles white where he gripped his sword. Your Majesty? Xuehua whispered, unnerved. She had never seen him like this. This is the first time I've seen Yunlin this furious. Lei Heiyu's laugh was mocking. Well, if it isn't Emperor Yunlin of the Vermilion Kingdom. His gaze slid from Yunlin to Xuehua, still held tightly in the Emperor's arms. He licked his lips, his eyes glinting with a possessive fire. That girl? He purred, she was yours. Xuhua's mind screamed in protest. What the hell is he talking about? Yunlin only helped me because I'm part of the Shadow Guard. Seriously? Lei Heiyu's eyes narrowed, a cruel amusement dancing in their depths. Let's see, I want both your Majesty's head and Xuehua so badly it's driving me crazy. Yunlin's gaze turned impossibly colder. In the blink of an eye, the shadows around them moved. Dark figures dropped from the trees, silent and deadly. The Shadow Guards, practically death gods appearing from nowhere to serve their master. They knelt as one, a silent promise of death to their emperor's enemy. Lei Heiyu was surrounded. He let out a sigh, feigning disappointment. But you gave me quite the headache last year, he conceded. He raised his hands in a placating gesture. Can't be helped, I'll withdraw this time. A wicked grin spread across his face, revealing teeth that looked more like fangs. He pointed a finger at Xuehua. Xuehua, until next time, one day I will make you mine, look forward to it. And just like that, he was gone, melting back into the forest like a phantom. The shadow guards gave chase, their forms blurring into the darkness. The clearing fell into a tense, suffocating silence. Then Yunlan turned, his hands grabbing Xuehua's shoulders, his eyes scanning her frantically. Are you hurt? He asked, his voice rough with a concern that made her heart skip a beat. She let out a shaky laugh, relief washing over her as a blush crept up her cheeks. Ha ha, thank you, Your Majesty. Before she could finish, he leaned in, his face close, and his lips met hers. It wasn't forceful like Lei Heiyu's kiss. It was gentle, questioning, and it sent a shockwave through her entire body. Her eyes flew open in shock. Huh, wait, what? He pulled back, his own eyes closed as if savoring the moment. Don't mind it, he murmured, his voice a low whisper. Just disinfection. He turned and walked away, leaving Xuehua standing frozen under the starry sky, her face burning, her mind reeling. Xuehua watched her, a knowing smirk playing on his lips. Don't mind it, he says. Of course I will mind. Her inner voice shrieked in a mixture of panic and confusion. Far away in the cold, opulent halls of the palace, Lady Jingfang knelt on the floor, her body trembling. Before her sat the Empress Dowager, Yu Lily, her face a mask of cold disappointment behind a delicate fan. Jingfang, the Dowager's voice was like ice. Yes, Your Majesty, the Empress Dowager, Jingfang whispered, her head bowed low, the Dowager's eyes narrowed, sharp and cruel. That night, it's already been over a year since the attempted assassination of the Emperor. You said if you were Lei Heiyu, you'd be able to take the Emperor down. Her voice dripped with venom. I placed my trust in you and even supported you. I even had to take care of corpse because of it. Jingfeng could only offer a pathetic apology. But now, unlike before, the Emperor's eyes are not on you, are they? The Dowager sneered. All you'd have to do is slit his throat while he sleeps, so why haven't you even made it into his bed? Silence. The Empress Dowager sighed, a sound of pure disgust. What were we even expecting from the battle at Xueling? Her eyes glowed with a demonic red light. There won't be a next time. The finality in her voice was absolute. Got it? As Jingfang walked away, her fists were clenched so tightly her knuckles were white. The humiliation burned in her gut like acid. Her face twisted into a hateful snarl. Shut up already, you old hag, she screamed internally. That woman Yu Lily, a low-ranking concubine who slithered her way to the top after Yunlan's real mother was executed. Jingfang's lips curled into a vicious smile. Just watch. This time, I'll be the one to drag you down from that throne. Back in her chambers, the Empress Dowager was startled by a frantic chirping. It's the Chancellor, a servant announced. A man in heavy robes entered, bowing deeply. Chancellor Liu Fan. He approached her, his voice a low whisper. Your Majesty the Empress Dowager, I wouldn't place too much hope in Lady Jingfang. He leaned in, his lips brushing her ear. One who's failed so many times is unlikely to succeed in the future. Keeping her alive might even be dangerous. The Dowager's face contorted in rage, her knuckles white as she gripped her fan. Jingfang and the Emperor, they're both such a nuisance. Liu Fan gently took her hand, his touch calming the storm inside her. No, Lily, he murmured, his voice softening. Don't let your emotions take over. She sagged against him, the fight draining out of her. Yes, I know, Liu Fan. The memory of that kiss replayed in Xuehua's mind for the 100th time. His soft words, it's just disinfectant, echoed in her ears. She sat in the camp, a blush staining her cheeks, completely lost in her thoughts. Even if he tells me not to worry, she mumbled to herself. Her comrades eyed her strangely. Something's been off about Xuehua since she returned, one muttered. Another grunted in agreement. That woman's always been weird from the very beginning. Xuehua just grinned to himself, a secretive, knowing smile. But what are you grinning about? One of the men asked, suspicious. Xuehua chuckled. I've always been bad at keeping secrets, it's a problem. The gruff soldier glared at him. If you're a man, keep your secrets to the grave. Suddenly, Xuehua's voice boomed across the campfire. Xuehua. She jumped, startled out of her reverie. Why yes, hurry and eat already, he commanded, a strange urgency in his tone, because far from the relative peace of their camp, Lei Heiyu was on the move. The battlefield was a whirlwind of chaos and steel. Yunlan sat atop his horse, his face grim as he surveyed the clash. Suddenly, a wild cry echoed across the field. It was Lei Heiyu charging forward with his men. What's the matter, Your Majesty the Emperor? He taunted, his arms spread wide in invitation. Come at me. His laughter was manic. It's the perfect chance to kill me, isn't it? Or do you need orders from the Empress Dowager before you can do anything? His forces crashed against the Imperial line, but then just as quickly they began to fall back. Your Majesty, they're retreating, a general shouted. A cold certainty settled in Yunlan's gut. Let's press the attack and finish them, he ordered. But as they advanced, a seed of doubt planted itself in Xuehua's mind. Lei Heiyu is strong, but not this week. Everything's a little too smoothly. The other shadow guards felt it too. The formidable warriors from that night were nowhere to be seen. This was just a bunch of weaklings. Yaowen's brow furrowed. What is the real strength of Lei Heiyu's army? Something feels off, he thought, his eyes scanning the terrain. Xuehua's eyes widened as she saw it. The enemy lines weren't breaking, they were shifting. They're being funneled into a narrow path. Realization dawned on both her and Yunlin at the exact same moment. Their voices rang out in unison, a desperate warning. It's a trap. Your Majesty, but it was too late. They were already in the canyon, and high above on the cliffs, Lei Heiyu appeared, his face split by a triumphant, demonic grin. Attack, he roared. Yunlin's command was immediate, sharp with urgency. Fall back, all troops retreat. A black cloud of arrows rained down upon them, a deadly storm of wood and steel. Men and horses screamed as they fell, the narrow pass turning into a death trap. They lured us into a narrow path and ambushed us from above. Xuehua thought, her heart pounding with terror and adrenaline. From his perch, Lei Heiyu watched the slaughter with a satisfied smile. All right, that's enough, he called out, his voice echoing in the canyon. He looked down at Yunlin, a strange mix of jealousy and desire in his eyes. His Majesty the Emperor really has sharp instincts. I want it so badly, he mused, his voice dripping with ambition. The Emperor of the Vermilion Empire, Ren Yunlan, that throne you're sitting on, I'll have it no matter what. Yunlin glared up at him, his face a mask of cold fury. You want it? Xuehua screamed from beside him, her voice filled with a mysterious rage. After you stole it from me. Stole it from her, what could she possibly mean? Lei Heiyu just laughed, a chilling sound. I haven't taken a single thing from your Majesty. His eyes glinted, not yet. An arrow suddenly flew past his head, and one of his men fell, taking the blow meant for him. Lei Heiyu didn't even flinch. He locked eyes with Yunlin, his voice dropping to a menacing whisper. I'm a vengeful man. His gaze flickered to Xuehua, a silent, terrifying promise passing between them. Live your life always fearing that I'll cut your throat in your sleep. With that final threat, he vanished. Why Yawen after him? The general bellowed. Yawen sprang into action. Yes, sir, me too, Xuehua cried, ready to follow, but a hand shot out, grabbing her arm. It was Yunlin. No, you can't, he said, his voice firm. He spurred his horse onward, calling back over his shoulder, you'd only get in the way. Xuehua was left standing in the dust, stunned and hurt. But if I don't fight here, then what's the point of being in the shadow guard? The old general rode past, his voice gruff. Xuehua, stand down. She watched them go, a storm of confusion and frustration raging within her. Why is Yunlin stopping me? Wasn't my strength the reason I was accepted? I really don't get him. Her mind drifted back to a different time, a different life. When she was Xueling, entering the gilded cage of the inner palace. She remembered seeing him then, so distant and cold on his throne. You push me away, yet still won't let me go, always so contradictory. And yet, I was honestly happy to become your consort. The memory of his face then and the memory of his kiss now blurred together. Yunlin, why did you kiss me back then? Why are you spacing out? A sharp voice snapped her back to reality. She was in a tent and the general was glaring at her. You're neglecting the Emperor's treatment. Do you want your pay docked or to go through hellish training? She scrambled to her feet, bowing deeply. I'm very sorry. Later that night, as Yawen pursued their enemy through the mountains, Xuehua found herself kneeling behind the Emperor. A soldier entered the tent to deliver a report. Yunlin's back was a canvas of angry red scratches, evidence of the battle's ferocity. Xuehua gently tended to his wounds. The treatment, he asked, his voice low. Finished, she confirmed. He stood, and in one fluid motion he untied his hair, letting the long, dark cascade fall over his shoulders. Xuehua's breath caught in her throat. He looks good with his hair down too. A blush warmed her cheeks as a sad thought crossed her mind. I probably won't get to see Yunlin like this once we're back in Vermilion Castle. He turned to face her, his gaze soft and unguarded in the dim light. Xuehua, he said, his voice barely a whisper. I want to bathe in the spring, stay with me a little longer. Under the vast star-dusted canopy of the night sky, a sudden splash shattered the tranquility of the moonlit lake. And there he was. Emperor Yunlin, his back to the shore, his long, dark hair cascading like ink into the shimmering water. Muscles rippled across his broad shoulders, a sight of pure masculine beauty that stole the breath from Xuehua's lungs. She had only meant to find him to check on him, but now she was an intruder in this private moment. Her cheeks burned hot, a frantic blush creeping up her neck as she slapped her hands over her eyes. Where am I supposed to look? Her heart hammered against her ribs, a wild bird trapped in a cage. This was the Emperor, to see him like this? It was a crime punishable by death. But her curiosity, a traitorous thing, made her peek through her fingers. He turned, the moonlight catching the water droplets that slid down his chest. And that's when she saw them. Scars. A web of silver lines crisscrossed his torso and arms, each one a silent testament to a brutal history. Her mind reeled, Yunlin is so beautiful, and yet, her embarrassment evaporated, replaced by a cold, aching sorrow. How did he even get those scars all over his body? These weren't the marks of a pampered ruler. They were the brutal signatures of a warrior who had danced with death 1,000 times. His eyes, usually so distant, held a soft melancholy as he looked at her. His voice, a low murmur that sent a shiver down her spine, beckoned to her, suggesting she should come in too. Her mind went blank. Come in with him? I'll pass, thank you, she squeaked, her face a fiery red. She was about to turn and flee when his voice cut through the air again, sharp and urgent. He pointed a finger just behind her, his eyes wide as he warned her about the tree, about a ghostly pale woman he thought he saw standing there. A scream caught in Xuehua's throat. Her blood ran cold, and without a second thought, she launched herself forward with a terrified shriek, crashing into the icy water. A huge splash erupted and she went under. Laughter. Deep, rumbling laughter echoed across the lake. Xuehua sputtered to the surface, soaked and shivering, to see Yunlan clutching his sides, a wide, genuine grin on his face. Her heart stopped. He was teasing her. "How is it, Xuehua?" He chuckled, his eyes dancing with mirth. "Feels good, right?" She stared at him, bewildered, water dripping from her hair. "Why, Your Majesty," she stammered, realization dawning. "You were teasing me, weren't you?" He didn't answer, simply pulling her closer through the water. His warm body a stark contrast to the cold lake. Her anger melted away, replaced by a flustered warmth. "Geez," she muttered, fiddling with the wet ribbon in her hair. His hand gently stopped hers. His voice was soft as he told her that her hair was beautiful. Blushing, she mumbled back that his was even more so. He pulled her against him, his strong arm wrapping around her waist. The playfulness in his eyes vanished, replaced by something deeper, more vulnerable. His gaze was intense as he leaned in close. "Were you scared?" he asked, his voice barely a whisper. "Scared of what?" "Huh?" she asked, her mind foggy with his proximity. He clarified, his voice softer than she had ever heard it. "He was talking about the arrows from the battle. Is he being this gentle because we're alone?" A warmth bloomed in her chest, but she pushed it down, putting on a brave face. "Yeah, right," she scoffed, trying to pull away. "I'm fine. I'm not the kind of person who dies from a stray arrow." "You fool!" The scream ripped from her throat, raw and desperate. She grabbed the front of his robes, her knuckles white. "I've seen people die saying exactly that. They said that, and they died." The image of soldiers falling, of lives extinguished in an instant, flashed behind her eyes. The terror she had felt for him, the terror she had buried, came roaring back. He stared at her, stunned into silence by her sudden outburst. The moment stretched, filled only by the sound of their breathing and the gentle lapping of the water under the full moon. Realizing she had yelled at the emperor, she pulled back, her voice small and trembling. Sorry for yelling all of a sudden. But she understood now. During the previous emperor's reign, Yunlan's father had waged war on the surrounding nations, leaving behind a legacy of hatred and resentment. Yunlan must have witnessed countless deaths on the battlefield by now. For her to be so careless with her words, a single tear escaped her eye. "No," she whispered, "it was careless of me." His expression softened completely. He saw her fear, her genuine concern for him. He reached out, his thumb gently wiping the tear from her cheek. He leaned in, his gaze so tender it made her heart ache. "Your Majesty," she breathed, her voice barely audible. He just whispered her name over and over like a prayer. Xuehua, Xuehua, Zu. And then his lips met hers. It was a kiss filled with unspoken emotions, a silent conversation under the stars. The world melted away, the fear, the pain, the past. All of it dissolved into a flurry of soft petals and pale moonlight. Far away from the quiet lake, the thundering of hooves echoed through the forest. A man with fiery red hair, Lei Heiyu, was being relentlessly pursued. "Seriously, you're so damn persistent," he snarled. His pursuer, one of the emperor's men, sneered from his own steed. "You think it's okay to keep the emperor waiting this long?" The man Yaowen brandished his sword. "That's why, Lei Heiyu, I want to end this with you already. Cute face, but a total monster underneath," he yelled, leaping from his horse, blade flashing. "If I bring your head back, His Majesty will be absolutely delighted." The clash of steel rang out as Heiyu desperately parried the attack. The chase was frantic. A desperate scramble through the rocky terrain. Finally, Heiyu found himself trapped, his back to the edge of a sheer cliff. Yaowen stood before him, sword at the ready. "It's over, Lei Heiyu," he declared, his voice cold. "This is a dead end." But a smirk played on Heiyu's lips. "You really think that means you've won?" Suddenly, Yaowen's hand erupted in flames, an ethereal, dangerous light. "You?" Heiyu's eyes widened in recognition. "Are you one of the heavenly fruits?" Yaowen's expression was grim. "That's right, so you knew after all." Heiyu burst into wild laughter. "Ha ha ha, that mysterious, innate power, the one that causes miracles, right?" He cackled. "The Vermilion Kingdom's full of freaks, isn't it?" Yaowen's patience snapped. "This ends here, Lei Heiyu," he roared, lunging forward with his flaming sword. But Heiyu was faster. With a predatory grin, he dodged the attack, flipping backward through the air as the blade missed him by inches. "You've got pretty sharp instincts, huh?" he taunted. Before Yaowen could react, he was suddenly surrounded. Dozens of soldiers emerged from the rocks and trees, their weapons drawn. One of them unfurled a banner, apologizing for raising it without thinking. But it was the crest on that banner that made Yaowen's blood run cold. It was a golden phoenix, glowing with an otherworldly power, set against a field of royal blue. "No matter how much the country burns, the soul remains eternal," Heiyu proclaimed, his voice ringing with authority. "Isn't that right?" His men roared in agreement. Yaowen stared in horror. The Eagle Kingdom. The previous emperor had invaded His Majesty's mother's country. Was Heiyu trying to ally himself with them? No, it was worse. This was their banner. He was one of them. "Let's go," Heiyu commanded, leading his soldiers in a powerful charge. Back at the lake, the tender moment was shattered. "Your Majesty," a frantic voice called out. Xueling came crashing through the bushes, his eyes wide with panic. Xuehua instantly scrambled back, splashing away from the emperor as if burned. "Xuehua, what are you?" Yunlan began, but she cut him off. I wasn't doing anything, she yelped, her face crimson. There's nothing shady about it, that's a lie, she immediately thought, her mind in a jumble. Yunlin ignored her frantic denials, his attention fixed on the panicked guard. What is it, Xueling? It must be urgent. Xueling gasped for breath, his eyes wild. Yawen has returned. The news traveled fast in a dimly lit tent. A battered and blood-splattered Yawen knelt before the Prime Minister, Unran. I'm sorry to see you like this, Your Excellency, Unran said, his voice calm and collected. It's fine, Yawen replied through gritted teeth. Report. Yawen recounted the events, his voice heavy with failure. After a moment of silence, Unran dismissed the other guards and addressed Yawen alone. I'm sorry I let Lei Heiyu escape, Yawen confessed, his head bowed in shame, but Unran's voice was surprisingly gentle. Don't push yourself too hard, it's saddening. Go and treat yourself now. Yawen's fists clenched. I'm sure he must have been heartbroken after getting to know that his uncle is also in Eagle Kingdom, he thought, his heart aching for his former friend. I know how much he cares about him. But his duty was clear. He remembered how Unran had saved him and the others from despair. Next time I'll make sure his head, that is, the proof of loyalty I can offer to His Highness. Later, by a crackling fire, Xuehua and Xueling sat together. She handed him a warm drink. Will His Majesty really return to the castle? Xueling asked, his brow furrowed with worry. He thought His Majesty might pursue Lei Heiyu himself, but Xuehua shook her head, a knowing look in her eyes. I'm positive that he'll return. She explained that with the Emperor away, the Empress and the Prime Minister were running domestic affairs on their own terms. Xueling looked shocked. She continued, her voice low. To fight the Eagle Kingdom, their current army wouldn't be enough. Xueing's expression turned somber. He confessed a secret, his voice a whisper. He believed one of the Wu Yun's bodies belonged to his mother's younger brother. He was from the Eagle Kingdom too. He then looked at her, asking if it was okay for him to tell her something so sensitive. Xuehua simply listened, her heart going out to him. His Majesty suddenly disappeared, she said, changing the subject. You found him, didn't you? Xueling nodded. Yes, when the Ren fell off the cliff. Even among the shadow guards, only a few are able to do that. It was a test, a brutal one, and by succeeding, he had earned their respect. They think I owe you a favor. Well done, I can't lose. His face broke into a proud smile. Xuehua's eyes widened. Xueling is that? He puffed out his chest. Senior is fine, he said, beaming. That means you've been accepted as a member of the Shadow Guard. A genuine happy smile spread across her face. Thank you so much, Senior, she exclaimed. Xueling looked toward the distant palace, his heart full. When I was reincarnated and pulled in front of Ren Yunlan, I wondered what would happen to me, he thought. But I'm glad to know that I can be of service in this way. Inside that very palace, Yunlan was not finding things so pleasant. Oh, a woman's voice dripped with condescension, coming back so soon and it's nagging already. It was the Empress. Yunlan, she chided, her eyes sharp. How dare you speak about me when you don't even fulfill your duty? She gestured imperiously towards another woman. Get Jingfang and get to work, she commanded. For how long do you intend to neglect making an heir? Yunlan's expression remained passive, his eyes betraying nothing. I will strive to meet your expectations, he said, bowing his head slightly. He then looked up, a sly, wicked smirk gracing his lips. However, I cannot guarantee whether my impotence can be cured. The Empress's face contorted in a mask of pure fury. Meanwhile, Xuehua was formulating a plan. Nice, she thought, clenching her fist. While Unran is busy with the domestic and international situation, I'll make my move. Go for it, Unran. I'll clear the slander against me and help my parents. I have to drag them away from Unran's side. She began her investigation, piecing together stories from the palace staff. Shuren's remains were never found, and her attendants were all dismissed from the inner palace, now doing menial work. She found herself near a back entrance, hoping to find anyone who could help. Suddenly, a harsh voice shattered the quiet. You're really a useless woman. There was a sharp crack, and a woman cried out in pain. Hurts. Xuehua appeared around the corner. A group of women were tormenting another who had fallen to the ground. You too, what are you doing? Xuehua shouted, rushing forward. The woman on the ground looked up, and Xuehua's breath caught in her throat. Her face was bruised and tear-streaked, but she recognized her instantly. Lingxing, the young maid, stared back confused. Lady Xueling. Xuehua's heart clenched. The other maids sneered, noticing their similar faces, before Xuehua helped the trembling girl to her feet. Lingxing was covered in bruises, a shadow of the happy girl Xuehua remembered. Fury ignited in Xuehua's eyes. Let's go, she snapped at the bullies who scurried away. She turned back to Lingxing, her voice gentle again. We need to treat your wounds. But Lingxing stared at her, her eyes wide with disbelief. No, you couldn't be Lady Xueling, she whispered. And then the dam broke. Sobs racked her small frame as she threw her arms around Xuehua, crying out her lady's name. In a quiet corner of the palace grounds, Lingxing wiped her tears. I'm sorry for troubling a stranger like you, she sniffled. It's okay, Xuehua said softly, her heart aching. Actually, Lingxing began, I used to be Lady Xueling's maid until last year, but then Lady Xueling was accused of trying to assassinate the Emperor. A lot happened after that. Xuehua reached out, her hand covering Lingxing's. I'm so sorry, Lingxing, she whispered, the guilt a heavy weight in her chest. That must have been hard, to go through all that because of Lady Xueling. Lingxing's head shot up, her eyes flashing with fierce loyalty. I don't think that at all. She cried, she was always kind to us, she never acted arrogant. She was bright and treated everyone like a friend. They called her a wicked woman of the inner palace, but she wasn't like that at all, she'd never betray his majesty. Her voice rose with conviction, her eyes shining with unshed tears. I believe in her innocence. Overwhelmed with emotion, Xuehua pulled the girl into another hug. Lingxing had suffered so much, yet her faith had never wavered. It was more than Xuehua deserved. Pulling back, she smiled gently. My name is Xuehua, she said, finally introducing herself. Lingxing's tear-streaked face broke into a watery smile. My name's Lingxing. She looked at Xuehua, a sense of wonder in her eyes. Not just your faces, even your names are similar. From a distance, the shadow guards observed the touching reunion. So she made contact with Lady Xueling's former maid. One noted, Yawen remained wary. Xuehua is still suspicious, continue surveillance. But Xiaoying sighed. Lord Yawen's being cautious, huh? I don't think she's a bad person. The other guard agreed. Same here, if Xuehua meant to harm his majesty, she's had plenty of chances by now. Xiaoying's gaze grew distant. Xuehua's already caught Heiyu's attention too. Besides, they say his majesty dotes on Lady Jingfang, but does he really? A memory of the emperor's stolen kiss flashed in his mind. He's always so calm and detached, but he still vanishes without warning, just like he did as crown prince. I still can't tell what his majesty is truly thinking, so spring is finally coming, huh? He mused with a grin. That very night under a full moon, the emperor was in his chambers with Lady Jingfang. She lay beside him, her voice a seductive purr. Your majesty, you must be tired, right? She leaned over him, her hand tracing his chest as he lay with his eyes closed. It's all right, you can lie down just like that. Her hand moved to his belt. Your majesty, she whispered, her breath hot against his skin. I've been waiting so long to be embraced by you tonight at last. She leaned in to kiss him, but his eyes snapped open. Night, huh? He murmured, his voice dangerously low. Jingfang, do you remember anything at all from that asterisk night? Froze that night? She asked, confused. He wasn't talking about tonight. His eyes were cold steel. The night of the ambush on Vermilion Castle years ago, you said it before that you thought you saw Lady Xueling after she shot you. He sat up, his gaze pinning her down. Tonight is supposed to be important. Are we really bringing this up again? She asked, a note of panic in her voice, but he was relentless. I just can't let it go. Please, tell me, my savior. Jingfang, his voice was soft, but the plea was in order. She looked away, a flicker of fear in her eyes. I lost my memories of that night because of Lady Xueling's poison, she said, her voice strained. So I want to know about that hateful woman. The air grew thick with tension, the unspoken truths hanging between them like a shroud. A dark veil hangs over her memories. I lost my memories that night because of Lady Xueling's poison, she whispered, the lie tasting like honey on her tongue. Her breath hitched, a perfect performance of a grieving wife. The past was a blur, a canvas smeared with deceit, and she needed to paint the final, perfect stroke. So I want to know what happened to that. The words trailed off, leaving a void she had meticulously crafted herself. But behind her closed eyes, the true memory burned bright and clear. Not of poison, but of a woman's sacrifice. A body pierced by countless arrows lying in a spreading pool of her own lifeblood. The memory was a ghost that haunted the palace halls, a secret buried deep beneath the throne she now occupied. In the dead of night, nestled beside the man she stole, the questions festered. Your Majesty, why? She murmured into the darkness. Why, after all this time, was he still obsessed with a ghost? Why was her body never found? Her eyes narrowed, a flicker of true fear in their depths. Even now, after a year of lies, it still didn't make sense. One full year, and his heart still wandered back to that night. The night Lady Xueling died protecting him. She remembered the chaos, the screams, the flames licking at the palace rooftops. She had scurried to the emperor's side, a guard demanding to know what she was doing there. I came to assist his majesty. She had blurted out, the words a desperate gamble. But a cold, nagging thought had slithered into her mind even then. Would someone who tried to poison his majesty really throw herself in front of an arrow for him and die? The logic was a crack in her perfect story. But she hadn't been the only one weaving a web of lies that night. The Empress Dowager sat on her throne, a look of utter boredom on her face as she surveyed the aftermath. She turned away, the silk of her robes whispering against the floor. With a heavy sigh and a flick of her fan, she spoke, her voice laced with annoyance. Seriously, you had to go and complicate things. Jingfang could only lie on the floor, weak and trembling, her mind racing. What should I do now? What is the right move? The Dowager leaned in close to her own son, her voice a venomous whisper that sealed Xueling's fate. Destroy all the evidence. At her command, the world was set ablaze. Witnesses, servants, even Lady Xueling's broken body. All of it was consumed by fire, their screams silenced forever, buried in a mass grave as unidentified victims. And then, as if the heavens themselves were on her side, a miracle occurred. His Majesty woke up with no memory of that night. The poison, the attack, Xueling's sacrifice. All of it gone, she seized her chance, her lips curling into a triumphant smirk. She whispered poison of a different kind into his ear, telling him Xueling was a traitor, a monster. She made him hate the woman who died for him, and in the same breath whispered that she, Jingfang, was his savior, his dear, beloved protector. With that single perfect lie, she gained the undivided love of the Emperor Vermilion. She bore his child and rose to the absolute pinnacle of womanhood as Empress, Jingfang. The name was a phantom on his lips. She looked up from her thoughts, finding the Emperor watching her. "What's wrong?" he asked, his voice thick with sleep. "You seem so distracted." She looked at his bare chest, the muscles coiled with power, and felt a familiar stir of desire and possession. But as she leaned in, a desperate, broken whisper escaped his lips. Xueling, her world shattered. Her smile froze, then twisted into a mask of pure rage. "Be my line, your majesty," she shrieked, her voice cracking. "Your majesty, not her, not that dead lady Xueling." Her long, sharp nails dug into his skin. "Look at me, the one who's still alive." She pushed him down, her body pressing against his, trying to erase the ghost's name with the heat of her own skin. He grabbed her, his eyes still clouded with dreams, pulling her into a desperate embrace. "Jingfang," he murmured, but the spell was already broken. Her mind snapped. This wasn't love, it was a hollow echo. She pushed him away, the sound of their bodies separating echoing the breaking of her own heart. The Emperor stood alone on the balcony, the cool night air doing little to quell the fire raging within him. He clutched his hand, a strange power glowing faintly on his skin. This heat, it wasn't his own. It was probably some kind of special aphrodisiac the Empress Dowager had the palace doctors make. He couldn't detox it fast enough. He had agreed to Jingfang's twisted plan, all to find out what really happened to Xueling's body, but this was torture. His steps were unsteady, his vision blurring. "There's only one person I want to hold in this world. One person," his fevered mind cried out for her. "Your Majesty," a soft voice called out, and as he stumbled, he fell into the arms of the one person who haunted his every waking thought. He woke up in an unfamiliar room, Xuehua's worried face hovering over him. "Is this your palace?" he asked, his voice hoarse. She shook her head, explaining it was the Shadow Guard's quarters. Damn it, he came here without even realizing it. His body had moved on its own, drawn by a phantom scent, a forgotten memory. The scent of Xuehua, the softness of Xuehua's lips. He gritted his teeth, the drug still coursing through him. "Your Majesty, what happened?" she asked, her voice filled with concern. He flinched away as she reached for him, his body rigid. "Please don't touch me," he begged, his voice strained. "If I touch Xuehua, I might not be able to stop myself." Her eyes widened in shock. Seeing his pain, she offered to call the palace doctor, but he refused. "Don't worry about me," he grunted, turning away. "Once it calms down, I'll leave on my own." She didn't leave. She sat by his bedside, a silent guardian through the long night until exhaustion finally claimed her. He watched her sleep, her face so peaceful, so achingly familiar. He couldn't resist. His hand moved on its own, his fingers gently tracing the curve of her neck. She stirred and he pulled back instantly, his heart pounding. Had she felt that? She settled again, eventually moving to sit by the door, her head nodding against the frame. He watched her for a long time before finally succumbing to sleep himself. As the sun rose, he stood on a balcony, the cool morning air a stark contrast to the fire still simmering in his veins. "The only one I want to hold is you," his mind flashed to her sleeping face, so innocent, so pure. "Xuehua," he whispered, but another name followed unbidden. Xueling. When Xuehua awoke, Yunlan was gone. She splashed cold water on her face, trying to wash away the lingering heat from the night before. He must have recovered enough to make it back on his own, right? Still, why did he come to her room? She had no idea what he was thinking, but last night, Yunlan was really. Her mind flashed to his feverish, handsome face, his eyes clouded with a desperate longing. Her own face erupted in a blush. No way, Xuehua, get it together. She scolded herself, shaking her head vigorously. All right, she had the day off from her duties anyway. It was time to get back to the real mission, investigating Xueling's false charges. She met with Lingxing, their heads bowed together in a conspiratorial whisper. The plan was simple yet audacious. "If what I'm planning right now goes well," a plume of smoke began to rise in the distance, followed by panicked shouts. "Fire at the Imperial Pharmacy," the news reached the Emperor quickly. His aide reported that after separating from Lingxing, Xuehua had snuck into the pharmacy and caused a smoke disturbance. There was no actual fire and no one was hurt. The Emperor's face contorted with rage, veins popping on his forehead as he clenched his fist. What the hell is that idiot thinking? Meanwhile, that idiot was stepping into the capital's darkest prison, walking through the cold, damp corridors until she reached a specific cell. Inside sat her father, Lord Terran, his face etched with worry. "So," he began, his voice heavy, "what exactly is your goal in all this?" She looked at him, her eyes shining with fierce determination. "Father, I'm so glad he's safe." She took a deep breath. "I want to clear the names of Lord Wu Terran and his daughter, Lady Xueling." Her father's expression was unreadable. "And why would a total stranger like you care about that?" he asked, his skepticism a palpable weight in the air. "That's a fair point," she admitted. "But still, if I give up now, it would disgrace the family name." With a flourish, she pulled out a thick, leather-bound book. "Please, look at this." His eyes widened in shock. "Is that the medicine logbook? Don't tell me you stole that from the pharmacy." She ignored his question, her finger tracing a line in the book. They claimed Lady Xueling used poison, but where exactly did that poison come from? Was a thorough investigation ever done? She pointed to two separate entries. According to the logbook, on the morning of the incident, sleeping herb was dispensed. The night before, numbing root was given out, both to different people. A memory surfaced, clear as day. It was father who taught me everything about medicinal herbs, in case someone ever tried to take my life in the inner palace. She looked him straight in the eye. These two herbs, when mixed, they form a poison, right? The emperor's subordinate stood before him, his expression grim. We should arrest Xuehua, she's way too suspicious. But the emperor held up a hand. No, let her roam free for now. His subordinate looked stunned. Your Majesty, the emperor's eyes were distant, looking at future only he could see. I'll issue a decree that she's acting under my orders, keep her under surveillance and report everything to me. For over a year there had been no progress, no leads, nothing but a cold, empty grave. He was placing all his bets on her. What will you find, Xuehua? Back in the cell, Xuehua concluded her findings. Her father rubbed his weary eyes, a flicker of pride in them. Well-reasoned, he admitted. She bowed her head. The truth is, I also came here to confirm father's innocence with my own eyes. Her voice became small, vulnerable. But surely no one would take a young girl like me seriously, no one would truly listen. She looked up, her gaze pleading. If you could share any advice on what to do. He let out a long, heavy sigh. Create sketches of the people who received those herbs, he instructed, his voice firm. And submit them along with a petition for reinvestigation to my patron officer. Do it under an alias through a trusted contact. He leaned forward, whispering a name. Yes, I'll get on it right away, she declared, bowing so low her forehead nearly touched the filthy stone floor. That officer can be trusted, he wouldn't dismiss it. Lord Terran, I will absolutely prove your innocence, so please stay well until then. As she turned to leave, she noticed two guards passed out drunk, an empty wine jug beside them. A gift from Lady Jingfang, one mumbled in his sleep, so that's how it is. Xuehua's eyes hardened. Xuehua, her father's voice stopped her at the cell door. Don't ever do something this dangerous again. He looked at her, his expression stern but his eyes filled with a deep fatherly love. You only have one life, never throw it away so carelessly. Tears welled in her eyes. Memories flooded back of her father raising her and her sisters all by himself after their mother passed. Being strict but always so caring. She wiped her tears away, her resolve stronger than ever, and walked out of the prison, leaving the silhouette of her father behind the cold iron bars. She worked tirelessly, gathering information and creating sketches of the people who had received the herbs. Then she sought out those who had once served Lady Xueling, presenting them with her petition. A reinvestigation to prove Lady Xueling's innocence? A former handmaiden gasped. Whispers turned to affirmations. Just between us, one said, leaning in close, I do believe she's innocent. Most people said the same. Everyone knew how much Lady Xueling adored his majesty. A blush crept up Xuehua's cheeks. This is way too embarrassing. Is it so obvious? One by one, they signed the petition, offering prayers for their former lady's soul. Tears streamed down Xuehua's face. Even though I was called the wicked woman of the inner palace and hated by Yunlan, there were still people who believed in me this much. A handmaiden hugged her, weeping. Still, you do resemble Lady Xueling in some way, just a little. With the signed petition in hand, she and the other servants knelt before the captain of the guard. Captain, please deliver this petition to His Majesty, she begged, her voice echoing in the hall. We truly believe Lady Xueling is innocent. The captain took the scroll, his expression unreadable, as they all bowed their heads to the floor. Xuehua's heart pounded in her chest. This will work, I'll make sure it does. For father, for Lingxing, and for all the kind people who believe in Xueling's innocence. The court was in session, the air thick with tension. An official presented the findings. The eunuch who received the other herb has been secured by the Ministry of Justice. He paused. However, he took his own life in the prison moments ago. A murmur went through the court. Then we'll never uncover the full truth, the official continued, his voice grim, holding up a sketch. That eunuch was reportedly serving the Empress Dowager. All eyes turned to the Dowager, who sat impassively on her high seat. She let out a soft HMPH. I have absolutely no idea what you're talking about. The emperor, his face hidden behind a beaded curtain, remained silent. Next, the official said, turning to the court physician, explain the effects of the medicine. The physician bowed low. Your Majesty, it causes numbness and an overwhelming drowsiness after which the person never wakes again. It closely resembles His Majesty's symptoms from that night. His voice dropped. Whoever gave His Majesty that medicine was not only disrespectful, they may have been trying to take his life. Jingfang gasped in horror. What? How dreadful? The emperor's voice cut through the noise, cold and sharp. Continue. Liu Jingfang and Lei Heiyu are maternal relatives, the official declared, dropping the biggest bombshell yet. And they were privately connected as well. Jingfang shot to her feet. What nonsense is this? She shrieked, her composure finally cracking. Your Majesty, how could you allow such slander? The official's voice was like steel. We have proof. His eyes, cold and sharp, met hers. He held up a delicate envelope. It appears Liu Jingfang and Lei Heiyu were secretly corresponding. In the letters, she instructed Lei Heiyu and his men to invade the inner palace, while she would poison His Majesty, render him immobile, and have him killed. A collective gasp filled the throne room. That is what the letters state. Jingfang's face was white with fury and terror. I know nothing of this. Where did you get such letters? She screamed. They were seized from your palace. You entered the palace of a noble consort without permission? Outrageous, your majesty. The official's next words struck her like a physical blow. The reinvestigation was ordered by His Majesty. He has suspected you for some time now. The ground fell out from beneath her. Her carefully constructed world crumbled to dust. Why? She choked out, her voice a strangled whisper. Wasn't I the one he cherished? The emperor finally leaned forward, the beaded curtain swaying, revealing his cold, merciless eyes. His voice was quiet, yet it carried the weight of absolute authority. That night, I was poisoned, and Lei Heiyu and his men were lured in to be killed. He looked directly at the trembling form of his empress. Is that correct? Her face contorted in agony, green makeup smearing with her tears. His gaze was unrelenting, boring into her very soul. Her entire body shook, and a single broken word escaped her lips. Yes. The court erupted in chaos. Hiding behind a pillar, Xuehua clapped a hand over her mouth, her eyes wide with utter disbelief. The truth was more horrifying than she could have ever imagined. Another official spoke, his voice cutting through the din. They say consort Xueling was the one who administered the poison. The emperor's gaze didn't waver. His face was a mask of ice. The night sky stretched on, a canvas of deep indigo dotted with cold, distant stars. A single spider spun its intricate trap, a masterpiece of silent, patient death glistening in the moonlight. He stood alone in the gardens, the cool night air doing little to quell the fire of regret in his chest. My plan, my perfect, intricate plan, it was a web of my own making. He thought, his gaze distant. I had used Lei Heiyu and Jingfang as the opening moves, a gambit to expose the Empress Dowager's schemes. Everything was falling into place, everything was going perfectly. Or so I arrogantly believed. Meanwhile, on a carriage rattling through the city, Lord Wu Taran listened intently. The young woman escorting him smiled sweetly, offering to be his guide to the estate. As they rode, she couldn't help but ask the question burning on her mind. Was it true? Did he really bring Lady Xueling into the harem just for the sake of power? Taran's companion seemed to know quite a bit, a detail she brushed off as a simple rumor. But she didn't believe it was that simple, to trust someone enough to endure a year in prison for them that spoke of a bond far deeper than political convenience. A soft chuckle escaped Taran's lips. His companion looked surprised. Was he laughing? He turned his gaze, a knowing look in his eyes. That girl, he said with a fond smile, she adored His Majesty. She would never ever poison him. The woman gasped, realizing her slip of the tongue. Wait, was that not a secret? Taran's expression softened, a hint of sorrow clouding his eyes. He knew Xueling's heart. If she died helping His Majesty, he mused, I doubt she'd have any regrets. The memory was like a brand seared into his soul. He could still hear her cries, the muffled sobs and desperate gasps from behind the door. She had collapsed at his feet, her hands reaching for him, her face a mess of tears and terror. Your Majesty, she had cried, relief washing over her. You came to save me. She clung to him, a lifeline in her personal health. But his voice was ice. Jingfang, he said, his tone cutting through her hope, there is something important you haven't told me. Her eyes widened in fear. As something important, she stammered. The men who dragged her away that night, they were never found. His gaze was like steel, pinning her to the spot. You were likely the last one to see Lady Xueling. His voice dropped to a terrifying whisper. Where is her body? Jingfang's world shattered. Your Majesty, don't tell me, she whimpered. He leaned closer, the memory of that cursed night playing behind his eyes. The Vermilion Castle ambush, have you not lost the memories of that night? The past came rushing back, Jingfang holding a cup of poison. Her voice a venomous hiss. Why would I drink that? He'd asked, his hand on his sword. She had smiled, a cruel, twisted thing. It's fine, really, even if you don't drink it. Her eyes glinted with malice. As for the secret His Majesty is hiding from Lady Xueling, I'll just inform the Empress Dowager about it. She knew his weakness. She knew his one vulnerability. If the Empress Dowager learns someone is important to you, she'll surely harm that person. That's why you pretended to hate her, isn't it? Kept your feelings hidden and stayed away from her. Every word was a dagger to his heart. He couldn't let her know. He couldn't let anyone know how much Xueling meant to him. That night he had made his choice. He took the poison from her hand. If I drank the poison and Jingfang was satisfied and left, I could just detoxify with the heavenly fruit afterward. But as he turned to leave, his stomach churned with a sudden dread. On the Chancellor, the man rumored to have plotted the assassination of the former emperor alongside the Empress Dowager. He was a sorcerer, he couldn't risk it. I must avoid letting him find out I can use the heavenly fruit. His plan had been to push Xueling away. Since I had fallen out with her and made her hate me, I expected her to run, to get as far away from me as possible. He could have never imagined she'd protect me. He grit his teeth, the memory twisting his insides. Jingfang, he growled, forcing the name from his lips. I endured for years. I let the rumors spread that I cherished you, though I didn't love you. I let them think you were my weakness. It was all a lie, a shield to protect the one who truly mattered. I let Lady Xueling be suspected as a criminal, so you'd let your guard down. All of it, it was all to keep her safe. His eyes burned with a cold fire. Do you understand now why I went that far to protect someone? He loomed over her, his voice a low threat. I'll ask again. If you answer, I'll arrange protection for you from the Empress Dowager's assassins. Tell me, where is Lady Xueling's body? The search was relentless, a desperate, maddening quest. They were digging up the public cemetery, an exhumation at the ancestral shrine, all on his own funds. But with so many bodies and over a year having passed, how could they ever find her? He knelt in the dirt, his hands tracing the cold stone, his mind fixed on one detail. A sword scar on her shoulder. I will find you. So you were here, he whispered to the empty grave. The memory of her last moments flooded his mind. Her body in his arms, pierced by countless arrows. Xueling, he had choked out. Yes, your majesty, she had whispered, blood staining her lips. There's still something I haven't told you. His own voice echoed in his memory, a cry of pure agony. I was planning to tell you everything once peace had returned, to tell you that I'm sorry for being so cold and harsh all this time. But her hand had gone limp in his. A Xueling. Suddenly, the world lurched violently. What's going on? Xuehua was thrown against the side of the carriage, her escort crying out in alarm. Her eyes widened in shock. A wolf, no way, Lei. The ground outside was a scene of carnage. Bodies of assassins lay in pools of their own blood. Just when I thought the Liu Jingfang matter was finally settled, what the hell is this situation? Panic erupted in the palace. Xuehua was kidnapped, the emperor roared, his face contorted with rage. Even though I assigned guards to her, why did this happen? Answer me, Yawen. His loyal aide bowed low, trying to calm the storm. Your Majesty, please calm down, the guards are pursuing them as we speak. Yawen pleaded, reminding him of his duty. The Empress Dowager's impeachment hearing is about to begin. Now is not the time to be driven by personal feelings. The emperor slammed his fist on the desk, scattering papers everywhere. Yawen, I'm going to find Xuehua myself. The carriage rattled on, taking Xuehua further into the unknown. She replayed the events in her mind. After Liu Jingfang's hearing ended, they were ambushed while celebrating. I was taken hostage, or rather, I decided to go with them. She thought, a grim determination on her face. I could easily break out of this barrel or these restraints, but I want to see who's behind this. She glared at Lei, who was casually wiping blood from his blade. Hey, she snapped, why did you kill all the witnesses we needed? Thanks to you, everything's ruined. He grabbed her by the collar, his face unreadable. Shadows with murderous intent like that, there's no way we could let them live. Shadows, the Empress Dowager's shadows. He leaned in close, his voice low. Xuehua, why were you caught by people like that? Back in the palace, the argument raged on. Yawen stood his ground, blocking the emperor's path. Your Majesty, please think again about what matters most. The emperor's eyes blazed with fury. Out of my way, Yawen. But Yawen wouldn't budge. He thought of the Empress Dowager, of the precarious political balance. Are you really saying we can neglect something as monumental as the Empress Dowager's hearing? Who exactly is this girl Xuehua to you, your Majesty? The emperor stopped, his shoulders slumping slightly. Yawen. His aide's voice was filled with hurt. Your Majesty, am I an untrustworthy subject to you? Someone you can't confide in, just like with the Liu Jingfang case. He bowed his head. Please explain it to me in a way I can understand, then order me to find Xuehua. Yawen looked up, his eyes filled with unwavering loyalty. If you do that, I swear on my life I will bring her back. The emperor's resolve finally broke. Xuehua. Hey, wait. Xuehua squirmed as Lei pinned her down, his face inches from hers. You're too close, he just grinned. What's the problem? Not like it'll kill you. It will, she snapped back. It drains my stamina for no reason at all. He chuckled, his eyes glinting. My instincts told me they were holding something interesting, and I was right on the mark. Don't tell me you attacked this carriage just for that. He leaned in even closer, his breath hot on her skin. His lips brushed against hers. Whoa, he breathed, his eyes wide. That expression is seriously dangerous. Are you trying to provoke me? Her mind reeled, how ridiculously convenient for himself. And I literally died because of this man in my previous life. This is so infuriating. He laughed, a wild, unrestrained sound. Stop, Xuehua, are you trying to awaken every one of my kinks? Why, you pervert? Ugh, I'm so done with this guy. He ignored her, calling out to one of his men. Younglu, stop by the inn nearby. I want to hold Xuehua right now. Her blood ran cold. The emperor stood alone, his heart a gaping wound. If only the storm clouds would come again like that time, he thought, remembering the feel of her in his arms. Even if just on a whim. But there's no way something like that could happen. He turned to Yawen, his face a mask of regal sorrow, and bowed. That's why, Yawen, please find Xuehua and bring her back safely, I beg you. Yawen's eyes widened in shock. Your Majesty, please raise your head, never bow your head to your vassals again. His voice was firm, filled with purpose. Precisely because you're the emperor and bound by duty, let us be the hands and feet that act freely in your stead. Even at the cost of my life, I will bring her back. The doors to the throne room opened. Your Majesty, preparations for the hearing are complete. Panic seized her. Am I really about to lose my virginity? In the quiet room of the inn, Lei was on top of her, his voice a low whisper. Xuehua, it's all right. I'll be gentle, okay? MMHP, but I'm not all right at all. Her heart hammered against her ribs as he admired her. his eyes full of a terrifying hunger. You really are beautiful. He licked his lips, a predatory gleam in his eyes. I'd heard the emperor never took any of his concubines to bed, but now I understand. He thought she was the emperor's lover, kept safe and hidden away. She struggled against her bonds. Sorry, I don't know what kind of misunderstanding you're under, but I'm Yun, and I've never been cherished by the emperor, not even once. He paused, confused. She stammered, trying to explain. The emperor and I have never done anything. His eyes widened in disbelief. Huh, you've never slept with the emperor, not even once? No, I haven't, so what if I haven't? His confusion morphed into manic delight. Wow, so that means you're a virgin. A wild, triumphant grin spread across his face. Just how much more are you going to line up perfectly with my tastes? Favored by the emperor, yet still a virgin, strong-willed and has unbelievable physical skills, and yet she's still completely virgin, you're mine. What? No way. He was practically vibrating with excitement. You know, back home, women line up begging for me to sleep with them. He leaned down, his eyes boring into hers. He remembered seeing her with the emperor, the raw killing intent radiating from the man. The way he had snatched her away. Practically flaunting, she belongs to me. How could you possibly think you weren't cherished? Are you really that clueless? A booming laugh erupted from his chest. Hey, you are seriously the best. Xuehua, I'm crazy about you, which is why you're going to let me have you. His lips crashed down on hers. No. She couldn't breathe, her lungs burned, his tongue what? He forced his way in and she gasped for air, tears streaming down her face. I'm so scared. At this rate, he's really going to rape me. The man who killed me in my past life, Yunlan's mortal enemy. Her consciousness began to fade. In the throne room, the emperor sat, his face an unreadable mask as the proceedings began. The empress dowager knelt before him, a sly smirk on her painted lips. Is this truly the time for something like a tribunal? She purred, her eyes glinting with malice. Shouldn't you be worried about something far more precious that's in danger? His fist clenched beneath his robes. So Xuehua's kidnapping was the Empress Dowager's idea. He kept his composure. Yaowen and the Shadow Guard are pursuing Xuehua. He announced, his voice ringing with authority, the tribunal will proceed as scheduled. But his eyes promised a different kind of justice. I swear I will drag you down from her throne as Empress Dowager. Outside the inn, blades flashed. Kanghu watched from the shadows. I figured Lei Heiyu wouldn't kill Xuehua, so I was just watching to see what would happen, but dragging her into an inn is crossing the line. But just as he was about to charge in, he saw them. Lei Heiyu's subordinates following at a distance. Damn it. Suddenly, a voice from behind him broke the silence. Please, Kanghu. He turned to see Yaowen and the Shadow Guard. The Shadow Guard, huh? So you came chasing after that girl. Yonglu, Lei Heiyu's man, stood before them, blocking the way. Is her existence really so precious to all of you? Yaowen's eyes were hard as flint. We've shared meals from the same pot. She's a dear comrade. Without another word, he launched himself forward. A blur of motion as inside, Xuehua let out a final, muffled cry. Stop in a quiet gazebo surrounded by the shimmering turquoise water of the pond. Yunlan stood alone, a portrait of sorrow. His shoulders were slumped, his eyes heavy with a burden too great to bear. A soft voice called his name, Yunlan. Xueling approached him, her own heart aching at the sight of his pain. She gently touched his arm, her voice a soothing balm as she asked what was making him so sad. Wouldn't he tell her? Her smile was bright, an earnest plea as she told him she wanted to share his troubles. Share my troubles, the words echoed in his mind, a ghost of a memory. That's what his late mother used to say. The dam inside him broke, a flicker of warmth, a memory of a gentle touch, a loving smile, all gone now. The words tumbled out, a raw, desperate whisper that carried all the loneliness of a child. He started, his voice cracking. I just want my mother to love me. The confession hung in the air, a fragile, heartbreaking truth. Xueling, he choked out her name, his composure shattering completely. I just want to be loved. And then he fell to his knees, burying his face in her robes, his body racked with silent sobs. She wrapped her arms around him, holding him tight, a silent promise of comfort. Her hand gently brushed against his back, and then she saw it, the angry red mark on his cheek. Her fingers traced the edge of it, her voice soft as she asked if it hurt. He leaned into her touch, his eyes closing as he murmured that her cold hand felt nice. It was just perfect, but Xueling knew the truth. Lord Yunlan is just putting on a brave face, she thought, her heart clenching. Being slapped by his mother like that, it's bound to hurt, He looked up, a faint, grateful smile on his lips as he thanked her. The scene dissolved, replaced by a memory from long ago. Back then, she had adored Yunlan like a real older brother. They were so young, so innocent, but even then, a shadow of sadness clung to him. He took her hands, his gaze so serious as he asked her, Xueling, will you promise to never change? Of course, she had chirped back, her smile wide and bright, I'll never change. He had looked so relieved, so happy to hear that. It was her first love, a pure, simple thing that bloomed in the winter snow. But after that day, everything changed. Yunlan stopped coming over to play. The memory shifted again to a desperate, tearful plea. She was clutching his hands, her face a mask of misery as she begged him. If she heard him without realizing it, she would keep apologizing until he forgave her. So please, her voice broke into a sob, her heart shattering as she begged him not to hate her. For years, she had tormented herself. Why, what did I do? By the time she entered the inner palace, she had constructed a story to soothe her own aching heart. It must be a conflict with his father. Maybe she just wanted to blame someone else for why he hated her. Because the truth was too painful to bear, to be hated by the one you love, without even knowing the reason, is a special kind of hell. Yunlin, no matter how many hateful things he said to her, no matter how many times he cursed her as a villainess. Even so, she had always loved him. She had never once regretted dying to protect him, her back pierced with a volley of arrows. The days she spent by his side as Xuehua, they were so joyful it felt like a dream, a beautiful, fleeting illusion. Her thoughts snapped back to the horrifying present. Tears streamed down her face as Lei Heiyu loomed over her. Her last breath, her final thought in that other life was a confession. In the end, I've always loved Yunlin, even if I'm reborn. A single tear traced a path down her temple. It has to be Yunlin's or no one. The sound of her quiet sobbing cut through his lust-filled haze. He froze, his eyes widening in panic. All right, I'll stop, he blurted out, his voice suddenly frantic. But the tears wouldn't stop. He grabbed her shoulders, his voice rising. I said I'll stop, so don't cry. He ran a hand through his hair, completely flustered. Don't cry, Xuehua, I'm not enough of a monster to force myself on a crying woman. He flopped down beside her on the bed, propping his head on his hand. Hey, Xuehua, he said, his tone shifting to something almost playful. I won't do anything today since you're crying, but what would it take for you to fall for me? Her answer was immediate, a choked whisper, and no, that's impossible, I'll never fall for you. He burst out laughing aloud. Obnoxious sound. The more you try to run away like that, he purred, leaning closer, the more it makes me want to chase you down and catch you. One day I will make both your heart and your body mine. He growled, grabbing her chin, his eyes blazing with a predatory fire. I'm not giving up, Xuehua, he's so annoyingly persistent. She thought, glaring at him. Outside, the sounds of a brutal beating echoed. Kanghu took a vicious punch to the gut. Doubling over in pain, you monster, he gasped, staring up at his assailant. This man, he was probably the most terrifying of them all. Kanghu's thoughts drifted to Xuehua. I wonder what happened to the others. I hope that Goofball is okay. Now's not the time to be lost in your own thoughts. The man sneered, grabbing Kanghu by the hair and slamming his knee into his face. Another brutal punch sent him reeling, and a final blow sent him crashing to the ground, spitting blood. That's pathetic, Kanghu, a new voice drawled. A foot slammed down next to Kanghu's head, followed by a flurry of motion as Lord Yaowen and his men burst onto the scene, a whirlwind of steel and righteous fury. Xuehua rushed to Kanghu's side, his eyes wide with concern. Whoa, so cool, Kanghu managed to mumble, looking at Yaowen. It's Lord Yaowen, you got beaten up pretty badly, huh? Xuehua said, helping him sit up. Yaowen wiped a speck of blood from his cheek with a smirk. His gaze swept over Lei Heiyu's men, his eyes glinting like cold steel. Now then, he said, his voice dangerously calm, since you've been giving His Majesty so much trouble, it's time we take our Xuehua back. His men tensed, their swords gleaming, ready for battle. Back in the room, Lei Heiyu was still trying to sweet-talk Xuehua. Just know that I won't give up, he said, a determined grin on his face. I'm taking you back to my hometown no matter what. What did he say? Before she could react, he was on his feet. Hey, he called, but she was already making a break for the door. I'll excuse myself, she yelled, but a rope snaked around her ankle, sending her stumbling. A rope, huh? He laughed, pulling her back towards him. He caught her in his arms, his face inches from hers. Your sense of humor is completely lacking, he chuckled. Suddenly, the door exploded inward. Xuehua, Yaowen came flying through the splintered wood, his leg extended in a powerful kick. A fight erupted, and in the chaos, Yaowen's men pulled Xuehua away from Lei Heiyu. Xuehua, you're such a handful, Yaowen sighed, pulling her behind him. Lord, Yaowen, she stammered, still in shock. Xuehua grabbed her, his face a mixture of relief and panic. Xuehua, thank God you're safe, right? You're all right, right? He babbled, checking her for injuries. Wait, it's not like that, there wasn't anything at all, she insisted, her face burning. Lei Heiyu watched them enraged. What's up with you all? Don't you dare get in the way of someone else's love life, he roared. With a final curse, he smashed through a window and fled, leaving a trail of blood and chaos behind him. Damn it, Yaowen shouted, don't let him go. I'm going to, Xuehua started, ready to chase after him, but a hand grabbed her wrist. It was Xuehua. Xuehua, wait. He pulled her into a tight hug, nuzzling her like a relieved puppy. Thank God, you're usually so strong. Would you please not get kidnapped so easily? Suddenly, a dark presence filled the room. A hand clamped down on Xuehua shoulder, prying him away. Xuehua, a low, terrifying voice rumbled, back off from Xuehua. It was Yunlin. He stood there, radiating an aura of pure fury, the setting sun framing him like a vengeful god. His cold eyes were fixed on Xuehua. You're His Majesty, she thought, but her heart screamed a different name, Yunlin. Yunlin's mind was a storm of dark thoughts. How will you atone for the sin of causing trouble for everyone? He thought, his gaze pinning her to the spot. Asterisk, shall I try out some interesting torture? Asterisk. Later, at a prestigious inn, Yawen reported that Lei Heiyu had fled, but they were keeping him under surveillance. Good job, everyone, Yunlin said, his voice flat. He told them to rest and heal their wounds. Yawen hesitated. Your Majesty, how did the Empress Dowager's interrogation proceed? The scene flashed back to the throne room to Yunlin's cold, imposing figure. He faced the Empress Dowager, his voice ringing with accusation. He remembered her past self, a woman who cared for nothing but war and women, indifferent to politics. The son of that Ren Dongbao, she had underestimated him. She conspired with Liu Jingfang to orchestrate the assault on Vermilion Castle, he declared, his voice echoing in the silent hall. With false intelligence, she threw the Imperial Guards into disarray and plotted my assassination. He sneered, while everyone thought he was just childishly squabbling with consort Xueling. She was making her move. To speak of assassinating me is one thing, he said, his voice dropping to a deadly whisper. But 4 years ago, she went so far as to poison and slay the late emperor himself. What? The Empress Dowager shrieked, her face a mask of disbelief. What are you talking about? Yunlin remained impassive. He laid out the evidence, the testimony of her own envoy about a shadow visiting the cold palace. Her body began to tremble. I have no recollection of such a thing, she spat, her voice shaking. Do you have any proof? On cue, a guard presented a small, ornate object on a silken pillow. This is a part of a poison vial that was used to assassinate the late emperor, found in the Empress Dowager's palace garden. Oh, that tiny piece. Her eyes widened in horror. What kind of determination did it take to find a piece like that? Her mind reeled. She thought of Binsui, the mother of the heir, a woman she thought she had beheaded without a problem. It was all going so well, and yet. Yunlin's voice cut through her panic, sharp as a blade. If you have any objections, state them immediately. Her hatred boiled over with his despicable father and mother. He's a very, very, very despicable son of them. Should there be others involved in this scheme, speak their names, Yunlin commanded. Depending on your testimony, your sins may yet be forgiven in part. Her eyes darted around the room, even Jin Liu Fan, the only man who's in love with me. A flicker of something unreadable crossed her face. She took a deep breath. My only accomplice is only Jingfang. She collapsed to the floor, her voice a hollow shell. This lily will follow His Majesty's will. Never in a million years did I think I would be removed from my throne, and by that detestable Binsui's son no less. Yunlin's fist clenched at his side, his knuckles white. Even after everything, I never once hated my mother, but I will never forgive that vile woman who stole her away. The wicked woman of the inner palace, back in the present, Yawen bowed. The Empress Dowager has admitted her sins. With no pressing matters of governance demanding attention, he continued, we can finally bury Lei Heiyu once and for all. As the men turned to leave, Yunlin's voice stopped them. All right, Xuehua, you stay here. Huh? Before she could protest, he had her, pulling her into his arms, his face dangerously close. It's time for a lecture. Her heart hammered against her ribs, he was so close. His scent filled her senses. Yunlin wouldn't be wearing something like a perfume, would he? But he smells so good. It makes my head spin. His voice was low, a husky murmur against her ear. Zioing told me your clothing was rather sloppy, he said, his hand tightening on her waist. Did you seriously have nothing going on with Lei Heiyu? That's, about that. So, what is it? She finally managed to squeak out the words. K-kiss, something like a kiss. And in what way, he pressed, her face exploded in a blush. Asterisk T torture, this is a form of torture, right, Yunlin, asterisk. And then his lips were on hers. Soft and demanding, her mind went blank. This isn't a reward. I'm going to be in ecstasy and die. He pulled away just enough to speak. How's it, that man? Did Lei Heiyu kiss you like this? And no, you're wrong, she stammered, completely breathless. He was more aggressive and pushy. The words tumbled out before she could stop them. He pushed his tongue inside. The moment the words left her mouth, his lips captured hers again, but this time it was different. Deeper. His tongue swept into her mouth, exploring, tasting, claiming. A soft moan escaped her lips. How's it, Xuehua? He murmured against her mouth. Did he only do that to you? She was drowning in sensation, her mind reeling. Your Majesty, why are you doing this? His eyes were dark pools of emotion, a raw, desperate need swirling within them. Do you not understand? Seriously. Her thoughts were a tangled mess. Asterisk, indeed my appearance is of Xuehua, but my soul is of Xueling. There's no way Yunlin would wish for me, right? I heard that he's impotent. In the first place, would Yunlin even lust after anyone? Asterisk. But his internal monologue was a raging fire. Right now, I just want to hug Xuehua. Even the slightest part of Xuehua's skin. At the thought of that man touching it, I can't stand it. I just want to touch her all over again and leave my mark on her. If my wish were granted, I know it's selfish of me, but I want you to love me like you did before. As Xueling, as Xuehua, just as you are with that soul in that body. The memories came flooding back, sharp and painful. Xueling's first death on her 8th birthday. A flash of steel in the winter sun. Yunlin, be careful, she had screamed. An assassin lunged and she threw herself in front of him without a second thought. Xueling, he cried out, catching her as she fell, a crimson flower blooming on her chest. This can't be, Xueling, you can't leave me. Blood trickled from her lips, but she smiled. I'm fine, Yunlin, I won't go anywhere. Don't cry, Yunlin, I really like your smile. And then she was gone. The crown prince was informed that Xueling was no longer. He had sat by her bedside for days, refusing to believe it. His aide, Terran, had told him of a forbidden art, soul transfer. Using the heavenly fruit and my own blood, I will resurrect Xueling. He journeyed to the misty peaks of Mount Hunkin, where he knelt before the immortal hermit, his own ancestor, Ren Yunlan. He prostrated himself, begging for guidance. The hermit's voice was ancient and weary. You're right, Yunlin, soul transfer can resurrect the girl you cherished. However, I'm warning you, even if you do that and are lucky enough to survive, you will still have to worry and continue to suffer about various other things. The hermit's eyes bored into him. If you truly decide to do it, then you must never have any regrets. Understood. Yunlin choked out, his face pressed to the cold stone. The conditions were laid out like a divine decree. The soul must be lingering, the original body must be present. A cocoon must be woven from a heavenly fruit, and a single drop of vermilion royal blood must fall into it. Finally, the soul and body must be placed inside while chanting the incantation, feeding them endlessly with the heavenly fruits. But the cost was immense. The technique consumes the very life of its caster. He performed the ritual, pouring his life force into the glowing cocoon, and she opened her eyes. He knelt by her bed, his heart both soaring and breaking. It appears Xueling doesn't recall being slashed, Terran observed quietly, but I still can't escape the fact that I made her go through something so scary. Terran's voice was grave. In order to protect Xueling, who I resurrected, from now on we should avoid needless contact, Yunlin decided, his voice hollow. We must deceive even Empress Dowager Yu Lily, and make sure she doesn't realize that Xueling is my weakness. I'll treat you and Xueling as strangers from now on. Terran fell to his knees in the snow. You are a noble person who bears the weight of this nation, and the one who sacrificed your life for Xueling. As your loyal subject, I will simply obey your will. The second death of Xueling was the summer when she was 12, riddled with arrows. We only had the soul in possession and couldn't find the body, he thought, his arms tightening around her in the present. So I wondered what would happen, but she resurrected as Xuehua. The Emperor's voice was a low murmur, filled with a gentle concern that seemed so out of place. He leaned closer, his warmth enveloping her as he held her hands, his body caging hers against the soft cushions. You really don't understand? He asked again. Xuehua's mind was a blank slate, her heart hammered against her ribs, a wild bird desperate for escape. What was she supposed to understand? The kiss, his sudden affection, it was all too much. She stammered, unable to form a coherent thought, her words catching in her throat. I don't understand. With a trembling breath, she lowered her head, the shame and confusion a hot flush on her cheeks. Please forgive me. Your Majesty. But his response wasn't anger, it was soft, so incredibly soft. I'm the one who should be sorry, he whispered, his thumb stroking the back of her hand. You must have been so uncomfortable that you were trembling, right? Her head snapped up. Uncomfortable, was that what he thought? No, that wasn't it at all. No, she blurted out, her face turning a shade of crimson so deep it felt like it was burning. The truth tumbled out before she could stop it, amortifying. Honest confession, it felt good. The words hung in the air and a profound silence fell. Yunlin's expression was unreadable, his gaze distant as if looking at a faraway star. And then it hit her, what did I just say? A silent scream echoed in her mind. Did she really just admit that to the Emperor? Her master? How could she be so reckless? The brief moment of intimacy was shattered by the arrival of his subordinates. Yunlin was seated at his desk, the Emperor once more, his gentle demeanor replaced by a mask of cool authority. Your Majesty, one of the men announced, there's a message from Lei Heiyu. Another stepped forward. Even General Aquin has sent a messenger. Yunlin took the scrolls, his eyes scanning the contents with sharp intensity. The weight of the kingdom settled back onto his shoulders. He gave his orders, his voice crisp and decisive. He called for Yawen, instructing him to split the Shadow Guard's forces in two. One group would serve as reinforcements for General Aquin, deployed immediately to Xuelan. The rest would accompany him. Yawen's brow furrowed in confusion. Where was the Emperor going? I'm accepting Lei Heiyu's invitation, Yunlin declared, a dangerous glint in his eye, to meet with Uncle Yuyan. The meeting place was an ornate, imposing hall, yet it felt strangely empty. Yunlin strode in, flanked by Xuehua and his most trusted guards, their hands already resting on the hilts of their swords. The air was thick with tension. A trap it had to be. Yunlin's eyes scanned the room, a frown creasing his brow. Where was Lei Heiyu? He was the one who summoned me. A man with piercing blue eyes and a cruel sneer stepped forward from the shadows. So you're Ren Yunlan, the man spat, his voice dripping with contempt. He looked Yunlin up and down with open disgust. You have the same ominous eyes as that detestable Ren Dongbao. Yunlin's own eyes narrowed. Uncle Yuyan, his father's brother. What do you want? He asked, his tone dangerously low. Yuyan's sneer widened into a vicious grin as he pointed a finger straight at Yunlin. Your head. The threat hung in the air, cold and sharp as a guillotine's blade. Otherwise, Yuyan continued, his voice rising to a shout, I'll have 50,000 soldiers attack Xuecheng. The room exploded into chaos as guards drew their weapons, the clang of steel echoing off the walls. Xuehua's eyes widened in shock. 50,000? Is he insane? Yunlan's mind raced. General Aquin's report had confirmed the Eagle Kingdom had already sent 100,000 troops to attack Xuelan. He couldn't risk it, he couldn't just assume Yuyan was bluffing. Yuyan leaned in, his face contorted with pure, unadulterated hatred. I'll make you suffer the same fate as the Eagle Kingdom, he roared. The Eagle Kingdom, a nation destroyed by his own father, the previous emperor Ren Dongbao. A country reduced to ash and rubble, and Uncle Yuyan, just a child at the time, had barely escaped the flames with his retainers. The memory of that horror, that loss, it must have carved a scar so deep into his heart. Yunlan understood the rage, he truly did. I want to talk this out, he said, his voice calm amidst the storm. But his reason was met with a psychotic shriek. Silence, Yuyan screamed, his face a mask of agony. What do you know about anything? The past flooded back, a torrent of blood and tears. Watching my father and mother get killed and my sister get dragged away right in front of me. His sister, her fate was unspeakable, taken to an enemy country, toyed with mercilessly, and then beheaded. The pain in Yuyan's voice was a physical thing, a blade twisting in the air. Do you have any idea how my sister must have felt? His wild, grief-stricken eyes locked onto Yunlan. It's your fault. The accusation was absurd, but born of a pain so profound it had warped reality itself. My sister died because of you. Xuehua's heart broke for him, but she couldn't let him hurt her emperor. That's not true, she stated, her voice shaking but firm. She moved swiftly, placing herself in front of Yunlan as a human shield. It's not Yunlan's fault, don't hurt him. Yunlan placed a hand on her shoulder, a silent thank you. Yunlan, she whispered, her gaze filled with worry. He looked past her, his eyes still fixed on his tormented uncle. Even so, he said, his voice resonating with a strange empathy, I want to talk. Yuyan's lips twisted into a cruel, mocking smile. A negotiation, fine, get all of your men out of here, he sneered. Then I might consider it. A trap, every instinct screamed it was a trap. Xuehua and the others looked at Yunlan, their faces etched with alarm, but the emperor's mind was made up. Xiaowen, take everyone and wait outside. The moment the doors closed, the trap was sprung. An eerie, ethereal blue flame erupted from the floorboards, licking up the walls with supernatural speed. Uncle Yuyan, lower yourself so you don't inhale the smoke. Yunlan yelled, but his own eyes widened as he felt the energy in the room. It's not just the smoke, the heat is wrong. This was no ordinary fire. He looked to his other uncle Amain. Uncle Amain, how long can you hold out with the heavenly fruits? But it was too late. The structure groaned, beams splintering, and the ceiling beginning to collapse. Your Majesty, his men screamed from outside. The world devolved into a chaotic storm of blue fire and falling debris. Yunlan saw a massive section of the roof hurtling down directly towards Xuehua. His blood ran cold. Xuehua, he screamed, his voice raw with terror. He knew with a horrifying certainty what this meant. Xuehua's third death is now. Outside, Lei Heiyu watched the inferno with a twisted expression of rage and frustration. Damn it, I wanted to be the one to take him down with my own two hands. A calmer, more calculating man beside him placed a hand on his shoulder. Cast aside that pointless pride of yours, he advised, his voice smooth as silk. If Ren Yunlan dies here, you'll finally be able to become the emperor of the Vermilion Kingdom, won't you? The logic was undeniable. The man gave the order, we're withdrawing now. Inside, time seemed to slow down. The ceiling crashed towards them. Stay back, Xuehua screamed. In a blur of motion, she shoved Yunlan, pushing him out of the path of the falling rubble. The world went white with dust and pain as the massive stones slammed down, burying her completely. Xuehua, Yunlan whispered, his mind refusing to process what he just saw. He scrambled towards the pile, his hands tearing at the rocks. Your Majesty, are you all right? A faint voice asked from beneath the wreckage. He saw her then pinned but alive. Tears streamed down her face, mixing with the dust and grime. Her voice was a choked sob. Don't you ever dare try to die in front of me ever again. The blue flames around her pulsed with power, but she was fading. Ugh, quickly while you still can. She grunted, the strain immense. Let's get out of this room. Yunlan roared, trying to lift a massive slab. But she pushed back against his efforts. Xuehua, this is an imperial command. She could feel it then, the mysterious power that had granted her this impossible strength, this second chance at life, being completely used up. But she wouldn't let go, not yet. Because I refuse to stand by and watch your Majesty be crushed. With a final, desperate roar, she pushed the debris upward. I'll hold this up so you get outside, Xuehua, Yunlan yelled, trying to take the burden. But just then, Yawen and the others burst in. Your Majesty? Yawen, his Majesty, quickly, Xuehua gasped. Yawen rushed to the Emperor's side. Get Xuehua, Yunlan commanded, but Yawen grabbed his arm, his face grim. The top priority is to save his Imperial Majesty, and that's you. Yunlan began to argue, but Yawen simply hauled him away. Wah. Your Majesty, this is dangerous. His men yelled, dragging him towards the exit. He fought them, his eyes locked on the girl holding up the sky for him. Xuehua, he screamed. I'll save you, so just hold on. Xuehua's world was fire and pain. It hurts, so much that I can barely breathe. My body's on fire. Is it okay if I cry? It hurts. I don't want to burn to death. A piece of flaming debris seared her arm and her strength finally gave out. My body? I finally got to be Xuehua, I was reborn, and yet, her vision blurred. The last thing she saw was the image of her emperor being pulled to safety. A faint, dying whisper escaped her lips. You're my Jez, Tai. And then there was only darkness. Yunlin was thrown clear of the collapsing building just as the last of it came down in a plume of blue fire. He scrambled to his feet, his eyes wild. Yawen, where's Xuehua? Yawen couldn't meet his gaze. She said she didn't want your majesty to see her like this. The words were a death sentence. No, Yunlin screamed, a raw animal sound of pure agony. I can't just leave Xuehua behind. His men held him back as he fought to run back into the inferno. You mustn't, please think about how Xuehua feels. Xuehua, in the void she heard him. I can hear Yunlin's voice from far away. A small, peaceful smile touched her lips. Goodness, Yunlin is safe. The man I love is safe now. Memories flashed through her fading consciousness. Yesterday's kiss, that made me so happy. Yunlin, you know, I was so happy to have been reborn as Xuehua. That's why I won't forgive you if you die from anything other than old age. You hear? Stay well. And be happy. I love you. The last of her essence erupted into the night sky, forming the magnificent shape of a blue flame dragon before dissolving into nothing. Yunlin could only watch, his face a shattered mask of grief. A memory surfaced, the words of Xuehua's master echoing in his mind. Master, no, the first emperor Lord Ren Chunwu created the soul transfer technique for the empress who had been poisoned. That is how the story has been passed down. And yet it is also said that he never used the technique before. Why would that be? The answer came to Yunlin now with the crushing weight of revelation. Because he loved her. He loved her too much to desecrate her peace. Just as he was about to bring her back to life, something inside him whispered. She died after being dragged into a pointless conflict. Do you intend to drag her into that conflict once again? If she fulfilled her duty as a human and then passed away, then bringing her back for his own selfish reasons, wouldn't that just be desecrating her now that she's finally found her peace? Yunlin's hand went to his chest, a sob catching in his throat. Don't you understand, Yunlin? He understood now. It's because he loved her that he gave up on bringing her back to life. And here he was, watching the flames that had consumed his love. He had forced her to relive this tragedy again and again. And again, to have her be reborn, only to put her in danger every time. The thought was unbearable. He looked at his hands, the hands that held the power to bring her back. Rather than lose her again, it would be better to just let her pass on like this. His face was a portrait of heartbreaking resolve. Perhaps that would be better for her. He let his hands fall, the power within him receding. He would not call her back this time. He would let her rest. Because I love her.